Special council meeting, presentation by the Alderman Markham. We will have a presentation by Mr. Prescott first, and then we're going to go to questions from the city council, and then questions from the public. The reason we've done that, hopefully after the presentation, some of the questions that you may have may be answered. If not, maybe some of the questions the council bring up will also help the public. If not, and the public certainly will be allowed to come up and ask any questions. With that, we'll call vote.
Councilman Perry?
Present.
Councilman Acosta?
Present.
Councilman Figueroa? Councilwoman Fonseca? Councilman Zayat?
Present.
Councilman Rivera? Present. Councilman Solano?
Present.
You have quorum, Mr. President?
Will everyone rise for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. So at this time, we have Mr. Prescott, representing Markham Accountants Advisors, with a presentation of the just completed independent audit. Mr. Prescott.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, just questioning, Councilman Figueroa and Councilwoman.
Councilman Figueroa is sick. Colleen is right here.
Yay.
Okay.
Everyone be aware.
Yay!
Okay, Mr. Prescott, and thank you for being here. Thank you for being here.
I'm Jim Prescott. Erica Lowry manages this job for us, and so she's going to present a bulk of the slides. But you should have received.
You need to use the microphone, please, for both the camera and the voice recorder.
Oh,
Thank you.
I-
Nope, never works.
what you should have received is the financial statements, which is this package here. It's several pages long, as you can see. And what we're going to do is try to go through it in a capsulized form. You said you wanted to have questions at the end. We could take questions during the process, but whatever you want.
Well, that's your call if you feel it easier to.
Well, if something comes to mind and you think it's important enough to ask at that time, we don't mind.
Okay.
Trying to get.
It's never easier for you. I appreciate you being here this evening.
Mr. Prescott, did you provide a management letter?
We have a letter to the council that is not fully drafted yet.
We're in the process of finalizing your compliance audit, so once the compliance audit is completed, everything will be issued at that time.
But along with the audit report, in the past, there was also a synopsis of a management review.
Yeah, and we're prepared to go over the questions that are going to appear in that.
But that has not been provided.
It has not been drafted yet because we haven't finished the compliance audit. And so that we have some findings in that. We'll talk about that later in the presentation after we get through the main part of the financials. And so I think we're going to reveal everything that we know about. And then later on, you're going to draft an official letter.
Excuse me, do they have a microphone so we can hear a little bit better?
I'm sorry, I guess.
Thank you.
Oh,
You can also pick it up.
Pick it up, pick it up.
Yeah, you can pick it up.
Thank
It doesn't
Go ahead.
predict.
Maybe this one. You said you're Erica, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, hi Erica.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? Okay, good. So you said you're working on something else? What else did you say you're working on?
Oh, we're working on, so you guys have federal funding?
Yes.
So there's a compliance audit associated with that. So if you're over $750,000 in 1 year, you're required to have a separate compliance audit. So that is being finalized right now. We're waiting for things on your end to complete the testing. And in that report, you also get a report under governmental auditing standards. So that report is where you will find a lot of the findings that we're gonna talk about tonight. So in the final report, it's actually issued in that report.
So this is, what we received is not the final report?
It's your financial statements. Yes.
Okay, and then when we get the final report, we'll have another meeting like this? Is that right?
I don't think so, because we're gonna talk about what that final report is gonna say.
Right, but if we didn't have a chance to look at it beforehand, I want to know what the findings are, right? This doesn't tell me what any of the findings are.
What we're
So,
gonna do is go over the findings.
no, I understand, but I need time to, I don't know about the other council people, but I need time to process it, is what I'm saying. So, you know, like, the presentation is nice, but I would like a copy of the presentation, and then to take it home and review everything, and then come back with questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I also comment on that, Jim? I was under the impression originally that we were going to be receiving this report along with the audit to properly review the entire audit, which we haven't until we just received these documents last week. I've attempted to meet with the finance department to get some additional information. That has not been available. No one has been able to meet with me. I've requested further information, and unfortunately, up until this time, have not been provided it. Your management letter, financial document, is an integral part of reviewing the entire audit and questioning your findings, your report, and also the figures. I agree with Councilwoman Fonseca that we need to do that in conjunction with both reports. There are some questions that I think are going to be brought up tonight, possibly by the council and also by the public, that may need further clarification or elaboration. Unfortunately, we're in April. The audit report should have been provided by December 31st. What was the reason behind that? You can get into that. We are only receiving it within this last week, and not able to discuss it with anyone because the finance director is on vacation for the last week or two. So we're at a problem, I am anyway, financially, to properly review all the documentation and your final report also on the financial of federal funds and other grants, which I have questions on. I would strongly request that the meeting tonight is not going to answer all the questions. And I would recommend to the council, before we accept the total audit report, we have an opportunity to review it, ask questions on it, meet with you again before we take a vote to accept. As a city council, it is our financial obligation that this audit report is called by us. It's our representative. It's our review of the financial conditions. Your overview tonight is not sufficient, I have to say, if we don't have all the information. So I would request that we could review tonight and ask questions and have you come back again to make a final presentation on all information and answer all questions at another time, as soon as we can.
So, Council, if I could take a minute. So FY17 was the last year of the bankruptcy plan. So as all the other years, the management letter goes to the administration and fiscal officer. The council is not accepting or deciding anything on the audit. So I want to just correct the comment from the councilman. This is a courtesy report to the council. This is not a post-bankruptcy audit where the council will get a report and be the receiver of the audit. The receiver of the audit is the AFO. The AFO gets the management letter, as you can shake your head. For 5 years, I have gotten the management letter. I have never presented it to council. This year, because it was the last year of bankruptcy, sorry. Because this was the last year of the bankruptcy, as a courtesy, I thought it was a good idea because I was hearing some questions that I asked the auditor when they finished the financial audit to present their independent findings. And in this update will be the findings in that final report for the auditors call it a compliance, we call it a single audit, because it's not mandatory every year unless you spend over a certain threshold of grant money, federal money. We don't always have one. We didn't have one last year. We didn't have a single audit. I think we've only had 2 in the 5 years I've been here, if that's correct. So typically, I apologize if there was a misunderstanding. Typically, we do not wait for the single audit to say that this is the financial audit. It is complete. The findings are complete. It's just how the auditors, where they put the report and where they put the letter. The draft letter has already been reviewed by me. The findings has already actually been transparent to the council, because in the update I gave the council for the mid-year, these weren't findings that I was surprised by. These were findings that I was transparent with about timing, about difficulty with reconciliations because of personnel issues. These findings aren't in the term material in terms of like wrong information. It was really timing and availability of staff and information. So I just want to clarify, or set expectations that I thought this was a good idea as a courtesy to give a financial update of the audit. I was not,
Can I say something, Council President?
Yes.
Were you done?
yeah, no, again, I'll keep talking if it more,
No,
if
no,
more
no,
help-
no, no,
if
no,
more
I have
doesn't,
questions.
if more doesn't help, then I
Since
won't
you have the
talk.
mic.
Yeah.
So 2 questions.
Yeah.
So you say courtesy, right? Courtesy to council. Isn't this required for us to see?
Not during the 5-year bankruptcy, it's required to the fiscal officer.
Okay, and
So-
as a fiscal officer, when is your end date? Wasn't it in April?
Yeah, but this is for financial year
What-
17,
Yeah, but when did your period end?
Monday,
Monday,
the 16th.
the 16th.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
as of now, we are the financial body, correct? And it's April 23rd. So if we're doing this presentation, April 23rd, well, that's another clarification, because I haven't gotten I've been asking this question for the past year, because I know your role is transitioning out, and I've asked since last year what that transition process looks like, and for the council to be informed and updated, because you've been doing a lot of that work for the past 5 years. You've been doing all that, and you have that knowledge, and we don't, and I think that's unfair, and I think as the AFO, you have a duty to give us all that knowledge that you have about the system, how it works, the entire audit. I think even if it's a courtesy, I will do a ordinance or something, put in the charter, so that it's mandatory that the council is presented a fair and complete audit, right? Because this right here, I have no findings, right? And a regular person's, it's great, and I appreciate you guys putting this together, but for our residents to read this and understand it, a lot of people can't understand this, So one of my recommendations was to break this down, so that a person at 3rd grade level, 8th grade level can understand this. Because as is, I don't understand it.
Well, and so let me step back a second, and so I'll apologize if that was misunderstood, so that's my bad. So this presentation is what you said. It tries to simplify, so what I ask is, as Council President said, let them go through the presentation, unless you just want to cancel the meeting, and we'll just do it after the single audit's done, and let's go home. You want to vote, and I can't stop you from voting on that and seconding it. So you could do that. There was zero plan on my part to do that, just so you know. There was zero plan to talk about the management letter, just like I haven't done in 5 years. I haven't done. You don't have to add it to the charter, because FY18 forward, those are the rules. The Fiscal Stability Act goes away, and the council will be responsible for receiving the audit, receiving the management letter. Okay, that'll be something that goes as soon as the FY18 audit is done. Again, as I've said many times in 5 years, I didn't make these rules. These are the rules established by the court and the state, and I have followed them to the letter. And that's why, again, I've tried this year to do what you said, because you're right. There is a transition. This was the start. I was hoping this,
Yeah, but
evidently it's not working.
It
If
should
you're-
have been done, the transition should have happened before April 16th.
Well, I can't present the transition of understanding and walking through the audit. I can't do it until it's done. Right, so here's the financials, here's the results, and Malcolm's gonna walk through what they found. Some of it is still a little challenging. You're never gonna simplify this so a 10-year-old is gonna understand, let's be clear. GASB makes rules, and then they make rules to make it simpler, and they make it even more complicated. So that's why most of that book is irrelevant to the everyday person. There's only certain things that really matter to the fiscal stability of something. And they'll talk about that too. So my idea this year was that transition of, okay, guys, next year when you get this, and even if I'm not here, this is some of the stuff they're gonna walk through. They're gonna walk through the schedules, they'll walk through the pages. Here's what we found on this schedule. Here's what, it's very transparent. There's no, I don't control, these are independent. I don't have any influence over this company or the next company. This is the last audit Markham will do. They've been doing the audit since the bankruptcy, and we are already doing pre-bid work to send it out to bid for a new audit company, a new independent audit, as this company is.
And who selects that ultimately? Who selects the audit company?
City council.
Well, it'll go out to bid, and the purchasing board, I mean, the city clerk could assist with that, but I mean, typically it goes to the, depending on the price, there's rules, and then it'll go to the purchasing board, and then when an agreement's done and a contract, if the council elects to want to be part of that process, fine, I have no skin in the game, that's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, no.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, in all due respect, Mr. Morganis, can I ask, first of all, point of order, what is your status right now in the city of Central Falls?
There's been an executive order by the mayor to appoint me acting finance director. As such, with the charter, 90 days the mayor has to submit to the council. I believe that's happening within 90 days because of the May 15th submittal of the budget.
So at this time,
I am the acting finance director today.
okay, and when did you end your position as AFO?
Monday at midnight,
Okay, so
11:59:59.
it's my understanding that the audit report was not finalized by that time.
Yes, it was.
Any action taken by the city council from that day forward is action that we can take as a council. We are voting on anything, whether it be in the previous year, which is the audit report, it's within the purview and discussion of the city council. Now, I've sat through many audits in the past. This audit and the previous presentations, I've disagreed with in the past because we did not get the entire financial documents that we should have at that time. We didn't get the management letter, which you withheld in your discretion at that time, which was wrong. And I requested that the management letter, even on this audit, I requested that he would bring you that up now. Now, I don't mind listening to the presentation, but as a councilman, it is our financial responsibility to question this audit, to question things that we do not understand, so the auditor helps us understand these things.
That's why
It is,
that's why we're
excuse
here
me,
tonight.
excuse me. That is why the auditor is here to answer questions between us and the public also. Last year, we were denied to ask one question of the auditor. This year, because we are a sitting city council, we have that obligation to ask questions. We have just received this, but it's incomplete. Now, you as an acting finance director, which I did call today to inquire about your status and to request documentation and information from the finance office last week, the week before, tried to schedule a meeting to meet with you and the finance director, not available or is unable to meet at that time. And I've been waiting to reschedule, but unfortunately, no rescheduling. This is information that, as the council, I can't speak for the other council members, but this is our number one responsibility, to review the financial conditions of the city, to ask questions of things that we may feel need to be asked, to review things that are in this that are maybe confusing. If we don't have all the information, the management letter, and other requests maybe by the council, then I cannot, in all good faith and conscience, vote on an incomplete audit report.
Councilman, you're not
No,
voting on the
excuse
audit
me.
tonight. You're never going to vote on this audit.
Accepting
You're not
the audit
accepting this
report.
audit.
Excuse me, I let you speak. This is my opportunity to speak. We are going to be receiving this. Once we receive it, it's final. It's complete. We have no other jurisdiction on it besides asking the finance department or the administration questions. This is the time when we can tear it apart, review it, ask questions, and be comfortable that this audit report reflects what's transpired over the past year, the past fiscal budget. Now, I'm not here to disrupt or to create a problem on the audit report. I'd like to see a positive audit. I want to see the questions asked and answered. We've tried to have public meetings regarding the budget itself. We had a review. This is a time where the city council is duly elected and responsible, since there is no financial AFO that is overseeing us. We make the final decisions. Now, Mr. Prescott,
Point of order.
Yes, Lenny?
he's not a councilman.
Mr. Lezere, first of all,
He's not a member of the
I want to ask one
I'm
question
just talking,
of you.
I just
That's
did,
it, then,
you-
yeah, you say point of order.
Colleen,
Yeah.
point
of order.
do you, at this point, it seems like no matter what is said here
Let's
tonight,
do it right. Let's
it's
do it
not
right.
going to be
That's right.
accepted.
Do it
Is
right.
that correct?
I don't particularly
I'll try to
have no
ask
interest in accepting it until it is complete. Until it is complete,
So
and
what-
we may have time to review it.
They're nice enough to be here. Let him please present, let's do the presentation. If at the end of the presentation you don't agree with it, then we'll take the next step. I
Mr.
think you're
Chairman,
being unfair.
it's-
They're sitting
I have
here.
no problem with them making a
Well,
presentation.
then let him talk then.
But as I said, we have questions of it. We cannot fully ask questions if we don't have the full report.
So what you're saying is you're not going to accept anything here tonight? Well, why do we going any further then?
My personal interest, Mr. Chairman, is that I cannot vote on accepting this and closing out this audit report finally without the full report.
We
I
don't
can't
have,
vote
we
on
don't
it,
have
Mr.
to
Chairman.
vote on it. Let him do
To
his,
accept.
let's do his presentation,
I
please.
have no problem with this making a presentation and
Well,
question.
it sounds like.
And letting the, no, I want him to make a presentation.
Okay,
I
let
want the
him,
public to
please.
question things too.
Mr. Lezere, you've had your say. Let him make his presentation.
Then we can
Thank
question.
you. Mr.
Yeah.
Prescott.
A couple of things, just to point out a couple of things that were mentioned here. I know this is an intimidating document, and it's tough to digest for lay people, and that's why we try to summarize it in a kind of a concise format here, so that we're pulling out what we think are the relevant and essential things that you have to consider.
Do you have this presentation that we could have?
You can have, we didn't print it out, but we can give it to you.
Or email it?
Sure.
Email it.
Sure. One of the things in the front, which we do not audit, we kind of compare it to make sure it doesn't contradict anything in the audit, is management's discussion and analysis of what's happened over the last year. Now, GASB has said this is what it helps lay people understand what's going on. with all these various reports. So I would suggest it's written in English, and it's a narrative, and it points out all the highlights that are in the financial statements. So that makes it more user-friendly, so to speak. And so I would suggest that you kind of read that through and then maybe develop questions out of that. The other thing is our audit report is dated the 3rd, right? What's the date of this report?
April 3rd.
So we finished our work April 3rd, and we issued the report. That means that's when it went to the Auditor General. That's a final document.
But
So
not the further additional.
that additional report, which we're going to go over the points that's going to be in that report, we're still waiting for some information from the city.
So it's not final.
It's going to be dated the same. It's going to be dated April 3rd, because that's when we actually finished our work. We just developed certain things that we need back from the city to actually pull the report together.
So how is it complete, how is it complete if you're still missing details?
We're missing explanations of certain things.
Right, so it's
But
not
our
complete.
findings are pretty solid.
But if those reports don't come back the way like they said or you guys interpreted
It's for the
it,
grants, not for
then
the financials.
how is it
Can you
complete?
explain
I
that?
guess I don't understand what's missing.
So-
And if the city has the findings, how come we don't have the findings?
So the second report that you're waiting on is a federal financial compliance report. It's only on federal grants, not state grants, not any kind of contributions you get in. These are your financial statements that we're reporting on here, and it's basically all the funds in the city, which include your federal grants. The separate audit is on the compliance around those, not the numbers,
Right.
but the compliance of how you gave the funding out, if you complied with all the 14 requirements that you were supposed to comply with. That's what we're finishing up.
Is that Gatsby required?
That is required if you spend over $750,000 in one fiscal year
In federal funds.
in federal funds.
Did we spend 750,000 in
Yeah.
federal
That's why
funds?
it's required.
So it is a requirement,
Correct.
Yes, and
and
it's not,
complete yet.
It's in here. If you guys read the budget, the fact that we spent more than $750,000 is in here. Can we please finish the presentation? Right now, run the meeting, bro. Damn.
I just
But
asked
we
about
don't
the
have
findings, or the most
council.
important question that I asked is about the findings. How come the city has it, but the city council does
Well,
not have
we
those
can't
findings?
issue the findings without their, knowing what their responses are.
So how come the city has some findings, correct?
yes, we did go over the findings.
So
with
how
them.
We're gonna
come
go
as
over
a
that
council,
tonight with you.
but my issue is, as a council, how come we are not privy, and the public are not privy to what the city is privy to?
Well, we were gonna go over them tonight.
I know, but do you understand what I mean? And I don't know if that's like something that you guys are supposed to give us, or if the city's supposed to give us, but
Well, you should have access to it.
we do
yes.
not have access to those findings.
Okay.
So, can you put that in the report? Is that a recommendation or a finding?
The findings will be in the report when they do the single audit. When they finish the single audit for the grants.
It's
The
okay, you guys can
findings-
keep the information, we don't have to know about the,
Why are you saying that?
because you have it, and we don't.
We don't have it. We reviewed the drafts
Okay,
on
that's why I
Friday.
just asked.
Then we write down our responses, which you know the responses. The findings are the stuff we ran into at the end of last calendar
So you don't
year.
have any findings
I don't
as of today?
I don't have a piece of
Okay,
paper that has
alright.
the findings.
All right, that's all I
I
want
have
to
a
know.
copy of the presentation
Okay,
that we reviewed the findings on Friday. They're gonna send a letter that I review as AFO because it was FY17. I am the officer for the city for that audit and that year. Just like every year, the city responds and then sends it back to the auditor. The council, again, this year, the idea was to make this transparent this year. You're
but
right.
it wasn't
I have
even the
never,
reporting, even reviewing the findings, I feel like if you're leaving, we should have done that as a group. So next year, moving forward, we know what we're reviewing. But that's just, maybe it's an extra step.
Well, can I just, typically, what happens is that we don't share or review the findings with the governing body until management's had a chance to respond to what the findings are. Because sometimes We want to make sure that we're talking about the right things, or that we might have missed something, and the manager's got to point that out. So that's the way the process usually, you know.
But doesn't the process also provide that the entire findings, once it's complete, then it's submitted to the council for action?
Typically, but
Yes,
not
right
always,
now, this is
always.
not normal.
Well.
It's not normal in my consideration after reviewing this for many, many years. You've always had the management letter and the review in a review of that prior to our reviewing it and accepting it. Right now, you're asking us to review something that's not complete, and we have no idea what the management letter or the findings are.
This was a mistake.
Okay.
Continue, please. Yeah.
Erica's going to walk through the presentation and go from there.
Okay. All right, so basically this is supposed to be just a presentation of the financial statements. We are going to go through some of the findings we had when we did the audit. So basically, feel free to ask questions whenever you want.
You sure?
So the big package you have, the city financial statements, pages 1 to 3 is an important part of it. So basically, these are your financial statements of the city. Basically, we do testing around these financial statements and we provide you with an audit report. So our audit report is on pages 1 to 3 of that financial statement. So basically, based on the testing and going through all the adjustments with management, after all the adjustments were booked, we were able to provide you with an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, a clean opinion, which is a good thing. So again, you will be getting a separate report, which is called a governmental auditing standards report. So again, that was the report I was referencing before. That will have a lot of the material weaknesses and significant deficiencies that we did come across.
So what is the difference between the first 3 pages and the final auditor report that you're going to submit?
So when you have federal funding, you're required to have a governmental auditing standards report, which is a report over compliance. So that is usually included with the compliance package.
So we do not have that report.
No, that will be in your compliance audit report, along with your report under uniform guidance.
I just want to clarify that we are reviewing this audit, which is not complete.
This is complete.
The financial statements are complete. It's a compliance testing.
The compliance testing, which is normally accompanying because it's required, because we've spent over $750, is not included.
Correct.
So we are,
It's not mandatory that it be included. Many times we've included it because we finish it at the same time. The back and forth and management's given us their comments. This year, we're not quite ready to do that. But there's nothing mandatory that says you have, when you issue the financial statements, you issue the compliance reports.
but that is a requirement under Gatsby.
Eventually, yes, all federal funds have to be anything over $750,000.
We are not working on of that final report, and we are not privy to any final determinations.
But we're going to tell you about those.
We're not going to see them yet.
We're going to see them on the screen.
Okay.
So basically on the city's financial performance, if you look on page 15, these are your city governmental funds. So you're going to see a column that says city general fund. So basically that is the general fund of the city. So that is, if you're familiar with the budget, that is basically where, the budget will fall. There's another page with budget to actual where you can see the breakdown of all the different types of expenses and how you perform from the original budget to the actual numbers. So at 6/30/17, so this is just a snapshot in time, your fund balance at year end was $668,000. So again, it falls into different categories, and the categories are labeled according to governmental accounting standards. There's certain definitions that they have to meet to be into those different categories. The unassigned city fund balance is 281,000 approximately. You'll also see the capital reserve fund. So that was part of the bankruptcy plan originally, that had to be set up separately. So your final fund balance in that is about 1.7 million. And again, that all falls into a restricted category because it's restricted for capital projects. You guys see page 15?
15.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
If you flip back to page 14, a few times in the audit, you guys mentioned the fact that we are not responsible for the school district, but we are responsible for the maintenance of the buildings. Under public education, there's $1.3 million and $1.4 million expense. Can you speak to that line item, or is that something for Lynn? Because I just wanted to make sure to clear up the discrepancy between us not administering our buildings, and if that's something that we lay out for facility costs that we were going to get back from the Rhode Island Department of Education.
That would be probably for facility costs, but I can get you more detail on it.
Okay.
Would that be bonding?
The bonding would be, I don't think that is bonding, no. But I can get you more detail if you want detail on the public education line. It could be a number of accounts that roll into that.
For the final fund balance, so 668,000, do you know what were the shortages? Where did we spend?
We'll go over the budget to actual, it's on a separate page.
Okay, and what about the net position?
But, yep, we're gonna go into that.
Okay.
The change in that position, you mean?
Yeah, and then for capital, will you also go in,
So you'll see on the next page, which should be page 16, you're gonna see the different things that change in your fund balance, so the things that happen during the year. So this is all the revenues of the fund, the expenses that happen, and then how you perform, over the year. So basically, you'll see that the general fund had about ending 81,000 in a surplus. Now that was after, based on the bankruptcy plan, you're required to, on a budgetary basis, anything over 50,000, you're required to transfer into the capital reserve fund. So that was after the transfer was made to the capital reserve.
do you know, I was gonna ask, why does that happen? Why transfer, and is that still gonna continue?
No,
So that was all part of your bankruptcy plan.
But what, do you know the reasoning behind that?
that's what the bankruptcy
That's what-
prescribed.
Yeah.
So that fund, that balance, what happens to that balance?
Len can describe it more, but going into 18, it will revert probably back to the general fund and be assigned, probably for capital reserve purposes. So it may not be a separate fund, but it would probably be part of the general fund restricted for capital reserve.
I think the bankruptcy treated that, they wanted to get that out of the general fund, put it in a capital projects fund, so they could be isolated, and so the surpluses wouldn't be used up. Now, once it's over, chances are it's gonna come back to the general fund.
Chances are. I believe there's an ordinance, that protected that. I'm not sure if the ordinance ceases at the time at the end of the bankruptcy, or I would turn to the solicitor to render an interpretation of that.
Yeah, again, that would be part of the,
It's a capital, you can look it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up. I'll send it.
Okay. Now, your 1.657 million, I'm trying to look for the exact figure on,
so if you're looking at page 15 still, that's right on the bottom, and that is called total fund balance in the capital reserve column. Again, it's restricted in the bucket for restricted because it's specifically supposed to be used for
okay, the
capital
total
reserve.
fund balance for this current year, for that fiscal year.
Cumulative.
Now, that's the
That's a
cumulative,
cumulative.
and what is the total capital fund balance? Which all the total fund balances from previous years have been transferred into the capital fund. Now, I'm interested in over the last over the term of bankruptcy, do you have a breakdown on what the fund balance in surplus, in excess, and how much was transferred each year into the capital, and then how much was expended each year from the capital? Because that equates where we are spending our money and where
Yeah.
our surpluses are.
That would be easily attainable from looking at your financials for the past few years.
Did you do that?
So we look at it on an annual basis, yes. So if you look on page 16, you'll see the capital reserve and about 2.3 million was spent in it just for 6/30/17. So again, over the past couple of years, there has been spending in that fund for capital projects.
And the balance after that, is that the 3.981?
That's the beginning.
That's the beginning. 1.6.
1.6 is the ending.
Okay, so we spent in the capital fund a 2.323716.
Yes,
As,
correct.
as an auditor, did you review those spending?
Yep, we have to look at those because again, just to kind of let you know, so these are fund financials. When you go to a government-wide financial, it's more like a business. So you actually capitalize your fixed assets and depreciate them. You will not see that on a fund financial. They show as expenditures. So when you convert it to the full accrual accounting, everyone, I mean, I know you might not all be accountants, but basically if you look at a business and you see capital assets, you're gonna have your buildings, your building improvements, and then you're gonna have your depreciation on all that. In your footnotes, that detail is in there. And that entry was made, so when we do all of that work, you look at the detailed invoices and things like that.
Okay, and what do you determine a capital expense?
They have a capital expense policy, which would have been over $5,000 capital.
So, so the cities or?
We don't look at
Yes.
everything over 5,000, no, I mean, we have a materiality.
Okay, so there should not be any capital expenses that are under 5,000?
Unless it's in conjunction a total, so like if they're doing one project and it's included as a sum of a project, so like say wiring was $1,000, but it's included as a big project, that may be included.
But other items as a capital expense, which I've requested a copy of this, and I would still request a copy of this be provided, of the capital expenses for fiscal year 16-17. I've requested that year and the current year also, but as an aside, I hope to get those to review of what were the capital expenses to determine if some of the capital expenses were legitimate capital expenses. I've questioned that some of the expenses may not have fit into that category. But you have reviewed that and determined every one of them is?
We sample a population, we don't test 100% of transactions.
So going on the capital improvement, so that 1.65, because if you look at page 7, there's also capital grants and contribution line item, which this is why this confused me, because it's in different pockets. So that, what's that capital grants and contributions? And is that capital reserve fund, is that our capital fund that we approve quarterly, that we look at like quarterly? Is that what that fund balance is? Like the lights, the street lights, is that what that fund is?
So the streetlights would have came out of that fund.
That
Would have been an expense in that fund. The 1.6 million is what you have remaining, so like a
Correct.
fund balance, what has been transferred over the
Yep.
years, and it sits there remaining as of 6/30/17.
Right. But
It's
you
not
said-
cash,
yeah.
it's not cash.
But you said we spent 2.3 million
Mhm.
in fiscal year 17.
I'm looking for a breakdown on that 2.3.
Because I don't, we
2.3.
see those numbers, I don't remember seeing 2.3 million. Right?
That's why
Do you
we
guys?
should request a breakdown.
Yeah,
I
there's a-
see here, one of the last ones we got was 1.2 million. This,
Yeah, so there was a lot of cleanup work that needed to be done on capital expenses, so
Yeah.
you probably
We've
don't
been
have
asking
the
for
final.
that work for a long time too, the breakdowns.
Unfortunately, we requested that documentation and it has not been provided. So to get a full understanding of those figures and to determine what those figures were and how they were spent, I do not. I'm not sure if anybody else is. I can only speak for myself. They have not been provided. And to get a full understanding of your budget, your audit report, when we are missing pieces of the audit report, it's difficult to make a determination of a final acceptance when there's too many gaps in it. And this is just one. I know there's going to be others.
Okay. So what are you looking for? You want a detail of the 2.3 million?
Personally, yes, I've been requesting it. I'd
Okay,
like
that can come from management. Management can provide
to,
that.
I've requested it, I still have not received it.
Should we provide,
All
do
right,
you
well,
want the
the
detail?
last one we got 22817, it was 2.9 million. The report we got,
Okay,
we had spent 2.9 million, it says.
okay.
So,
So we can send you a detail of that if that's what you need.
right, because what we're receiving, our statements is not reflective of what we spent.
Okay.
Do you understand?
No, I totally understand.
That's just,
So do you want the
that's just a
detail?
cleanup, like you're saying,
Yeah.
something moves to
Yeah,
expense.
we made adjustments to these.
There were a number of adjustments that happened during the audit.
And will we know what those adjustments are?
We have details of them, if you would like.
We do.
can send them all to
Yes,
you.
absolutely, because that will inform our decision making. We're approving the budget next month for
Okay.
the next fiscal year, and I think those details will help us. So if the city tells me they're gonna spend $2 million on X, Y, Z, and they don't, I don't know the inner workings, what happens, right? From what they tell us, what we see to the final thing. We don't see that middle.
Yeah.
Right? And I think as decision makers, in order for us to fully understand the process, we have to see that middle, right? And that's what we miss all the time, so it's,
So you guys want the detailed journal entries and all the trial balances?
if that helps.
Erica,
Because I'm trying to piece it together myself, like, I'm not going crazy, it just doesn't make sense.
All right, just so I can send it all to you, just so you're aware, there's several funds in the city, so you have to be aware of all the fund financials.
And that's the overview that I've been asking for.
Okay.
but I'd also, if you're going to do that, I'd also like to request besides the capital fund, the in excess revenue that you've documented over the years. We do not have an accounting of how our surplus, I would call it in the past, our surplus funds, how it's trailed over the past few years, where it is now, how we've spent it, which would be the capital fund, or any other accounts that have spent money in that vein. We just finished Lent, and during this time, people call me a doubting Thomas, and I am. And that's why whatever documentation you could provide, I don't mind reviewing it, and I'm sure some of the other council members wouldn't mind receiving it, so it gives them a clearer understanding of, it took you a year to do this, a little less than a year. We received this last week, and trying to determine your interpretations of the financial conditions of the city, which took you almost 8-9 months or more. We've asked to review this in 1 week without the final documentation and final management letter report, which to me, that's part of the final review and acceptance. That's what we are paying you as a council. We authorize the audit report to your company. It's our responsibility to see the final product, not just the administration, but the city council. That's what we're paying for. And I want to see it all. And I'm not doubting your work, just show me. Show me how you come to these figures. That's all.
Can I go back to page 7? The capital grants and contributions?
Yep.
So under general government, the 440,000. So just so I can understand, that's revenue that we received,
Yeah.
capital, like grants that go towards capital improvement projects?
No,
Does that
that's
go
just
towards
the
that
name,
fund?
that's not specifically capital reserve money. It's just the name of it, it's a capital grant, it's not specifically
Do you
used
know
for capital.
what funds?
Breakdown.
Where did you get that 440,000?
That could be a number of, I can get you the detail. I
Yes,
don't
I
know
would
the.
like those details.
Okay.
And then right under that, you said the change in amount is revenue that was received for 115 Illinois project. What does that mean?
Where was that?
Right underneath, total revenue received from capital grants in 2017 was 440,000. Then the next sentence, the change in amount is revenue that was received for the 115 Illinois project.
Yeah, so that would have been contributions that were received for the Illinois project. I think there was a detail that was provided by management of the breakdown of the things received for Illinois.
That includes that's in the 440,000.
Yeah, because I believe it was over a course of a couple of years that it was received.
Okay, yes, I would like to see that as well.
If it
So
was over,
understand that these pages that you're referring to here now are management's pages.
Okay, and man, we don't have that information as well.
They're the responsible party. Like I said to begin with, we test these things and make sure they don't contradict the financials. But this is management's
So
discussion.
should management be here as well, at the table?
Management's discussion and analysis. I'm just telling you about
Yeah,
this
yeah.
section of the report
Mhm.
is the MD&A.
That we don't.
Yeah, we don't write this. We're not allowed to write this.
No, they write.
Okay, but you understand, for us, we don't have that information.
Sure, we can give you all the information.
But if you say you don't have it, then,
No, we do.
okay.
But basically, what we do with this is tie it back to the financials. They write it. We tie the numbers back and make sure it doesn't contradict what was in the financials.
Alright, so, Council President, I'd like to ask for everything that the city has, we need, like tomorrow, today, yesterday.
I'll second that one, if that's a motion.
What is the motion?
Right, because.
I don't think you need a motion.
Oh, we don't, but we also need to be, the public needs to be privy to this information.
I think you're here to make it fine.
Okay, so
Can I help clarify one thing?
440.
I'm sorry. So the council was, I believe, given a memo. I don't know if it was my memo, but it broke down the outside contributors to 115 a couple of months ago, I believe. Wait, was that my memo, right? So, sorry, I can't remember all the memos, all right. So there was a memo provided to the council, and I believe that as part of 17, that's what that bucket was referring to. So there was a memo presented to the council that broke down from whether it was a contribution or a company or a single person, the breakdown of the million and change, throughout the whole history, whether it wasn't specific to one fiscal year. So the audit sort of has walls around it, but there was a request, I believe, from the council that I tried to answer with that memo. So I just wanted to clarify, that was transparent in total for that. I think that piece is like, breaks down when we got it, because there was like a multi-year effort to collect money.
In all due respect, Mr. McGinnis, I have never received it. Okay?
It was emailed, but,
I never received it, okay? I document that. I have never received it and I've requested it.
so the total, can I just clarify, the total amount for 115 Illinois is 1.675 million.
No.
That's the total cost.
Illinois is a separate side fund in the back of the financials. That is your capital reserve fund. That's separate in the side.
No, I understand, but
Okay.
in total, so the report we got, it said, total contribution is 1.675 million. All my constituents asked me, how much money does that building cost? How much money? Is that 1.675?
Is that that was the
That's the
total on the
total.
memo? I can't remember what.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's the total amount.
Does
yes.
that include all architectural, all construction fees and other items?
That's everything.
I haven't received it, so I don't.
So that 600,000 that came from the state, that was just money. How did we make that decision to use that 600,000 at 115 Illinois?
So like I said in the, I believe the memo addressed that, so what it, I believe we were gonna pay the 600 to the state in the fiscal year. The state was gonna give us 600 for 115. They decided they weren't gonna transfer money. You know, a lot of times when we have same, you know, handshake, meaning you give money, we give money, we're not gonna spend money to wire money. So they said, okay, we'll add the letter, which I provided to the council, the state letter saying, we'll credit the 600. And then,
But they were
so
gonna- they
we
were
had an
gonna give
obligation
us-
to pay the 600, so it was, so.
Well,
well,
we have it in the past years, let's just say that, right?
Well, we paid the first year.
The first, but after that, we haven't
We-
paid them a dime
we've done-
for bankruptcy.
From us, you mean
Yeah.
cash, correct, right, they were nice enough to appropriate.
Okay, so
And
if, but if
this-
it
that-
didn't,
That year, they weren't gonna do that. And
okay,
I don't know, it doesn't look like it's in 19 budget right now.
all right, that makes sense.
So we're working with the state, we actually put in some enabling legislation right now to try to deal with that problem, because right now it's not in 19 state.
I'm just making a point
budgets.
because that money would've just came back to the city. In the past years, it's just came back to the city, right? We put it in the general fund.
When
But
you
we
take
didn't
that
pay it
money,
out.
I'm sorry.
The 600,000, we didn't pay it out, so it's
Well,
essentially our
we
money.
wouldn't, no, we wouldn't have taken the money in.
It would have come back to the general fund.
Right, we wouldn't
No,
have
no, it would've
dispersed
never
it. We
come back
haven't-
to the
we
general
haven't
fund.
dispersed that money since the first year.
No,
Is
no,
what
no,
I'm saying.
time out. We've never received 600 grand from the state.
No,
And
not
kept
receive
it.
it, I'm saying
We expended it.
we wouldn't expend, we've never given them, except the first year. We haven't, the city has not given them the 600,000, because they've forgiven it or whatever.
No, they appropriate a line item in their budget, and then they do some accounting to accept it as if we gave it to them. And then they, on their ledger, they say, okay, you don't owe 2 million now, you owe
Right.
1.4.
Right,
So they do that. It's not a revenue generator for us. That's why I just want to clear.
But
If we didn't, you know, we're not allowed to decide, oh, give us that money, we want it as surplus, and we don't want to count it towards, you know, the 3 million. I just want to make that clear.
But can I assume that it was not in our budget to do that?
It's never been in our budget.
Okay, so we're appropriating funds, and funds are being appropriated for the city that have not been appropriated or in our budget, which is wrong.
As AFO, I have a legal obligation to do what's in the best interest of the city, and the best interest of the
Handshake in a
city
week.
is to pay, is to pay that.
so the 600 will be included in this, in the 19 budget.
Well, we're gonna have to, well, we hope the legislation,
Well, to be fiscally responsible, we should include it, is what you're saying, since it's not promised us.
or have a plan to pay by 2021. We don't have to, again, there's no annual payment or monthly payment. It's as required, you know, as able until
So you should
2021.
allocate the 600,000, just in case.
Well, that would be,
My suggestion, though.
Okay,
anyway,
yeah.
that's
Everything
not my
want to
fault.
continue? Thank you for your patience.
So on page 16, we were talking about the changes in the different funds. So again, I don't know if you had any questions. We kind of went over the capital reserve and the activity that went through there. And you're looking for the detail on that, which we can provide you. The other governmental funds, again, there is more detail that makes up that column in the last few pages of your financial statements. So if you look on pages 80, 86, all the way to page 89, I believe. Actually, all the way to page 91. This is the detail of all your special revenue funds. So in these funds, you'll have CDBG, you'll have your Illinois Ave, which you were asking about. You have some EDI Community Center activity. You have some,
What is that one? That's the community center?
yeah, there's some small funds back here. We probably didn't even look at it, it's $2,000.
But you don't know what that is?
No.
So I'd like to know what that is from the city or.
And then
Does
there's,
that include all, even NGO accounts, besides federal funds, any other private accounts?
these are, yes, so special revenue funds usually meet the definition of a special revenue fund from a third party. It's restricted. So you'll have federal funds back here, you'll have Rhode Island Foundation, any state grants, those would all be recorded back here. Any police funding that comes in for a special reason, donations and things, those would be in a separate fund back here. So you'll see the detail. There's balance sheets and then there's P&Ls back here on each fund. So again, the total of all those funds roll up to page 16.
Do you have an accounting for any funds that came in from the detention facility corporation?
The detention facility, if it's labeled back here, if it's in a separate fund, it would be in here, yes. As for a specific that I remember detention, I don't.
This was 16 and 17, so part of that year, I believe there were funds that came into the city, which are an additional revenue.
Were they restricted?
No,
If they were general
I
fund,
don't believe so. That's why I'm asking to find them.
so they may be in the general
They're
fund.
probably the general fund.
But wouldn't you segregate them as listing them coming in from another source?
Not if they're not restricted, they wouldn't fall into the special revenue fund requirement. If they're general fund, they would be in your general fund and they would be segregated by the different revenue line items that you budgeted them for. Like, so if you budgeted for that revenue source, you would have them on that budgeted line.
Did you determine any of those funds in your audit review?
On the detention facility, how much are you talking dollar-wise that you thought you got?
I'm asking you.
I can go back into the detail here and find out if there is, but right now I just have the total, so I do have detail. If you need more detail, I can get it for you, okay?
Yes.
So on page 16, in detail, it's a summary of all the revenue sources, right? General property taxes, under that category, intergovernmental. That could very well be in that line.
It's not a governmental agency.
Intergovernmental is usually other state agencies and the
It's
funding.
not a state agency. It's a private corporation.
Public-private.
Okay. So that probably would fall under other revenues if it was in there, but I can get you the detail.
Could you break down the detail on, we know the general property account and the taxes that were brought in provide the projected or with the actual projections that came in? How much separated came in from prior years?
It's in there.
Is
For the
there-
tax revenue?
It's in there.
Yeah,
Yes, you can find that out. It's in the budget to
It's in
actual.
there.
So there is, if you get the trial balances, which I can provide you, it's separated out by tax year. So you can see what's collected by tax year. So basically, the way the trial balance works is cash collected, and that's how it's reported.
right.
Going back to page 91, the breakdowns.
91?
Yeah, okay. Can you just explain the difference between the two charts for, like, either, I mean, it's all recreation capital, 115 Illinois. Can you kind of just explain that? The combining balance sheet versus combining statement.
One is a balance sheet, and one is like a P&L, like an income and expense. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, but
Okay.
are the numbers supposed to match up?
The only number that will match is on your balance sheet, your total fund balance would be on the bottom, under fund balance end of year.
Which for Illinois doesn't say anything.
Close.
Yep, Illinois is closed out, it's done as of 6/30/17.
So, okay, so then explain the bottom graph to me a little bit, please.
The what?
The bottom portion of it? So 803, that's what we received,
Yep,
and then what's the 1.4?
those were the capital expenditures for that fiscal year.
So we don't know.
But
the
that
total.
doesn't add up to 1.456, or, I don't know, I'm confused.
Well, that's a revenue up top.
No, I understand, but if that's the total expenditures, 1.4, our total liability is 1.456. not 1.416.
No, that's a due to, due from.
What does that mean?
That means that's due to the general fund.
Ooh.
So there, 1.1456
Mm-hmm.
is due to another fund, so it says due to other funds. So that's a liability. So when you're looking at fund balance, you're looking at the bottom line. And that's where you tie out the bottom line on the bottom.
So 1.416 would have been expended from the general fund.
I can get you the total. It might have transferred over from the capital reserve. There was inter-fund transfers.
And this is only for this fiscal year, so there may be an additional amount.
No,
Prior.
it's at 115 Illinois Street, based on discussions with management internally, it's done as of 6/30/17.
But what you said there was what's it called, transfer?
Yeah.
So no city dollars was going into this building?
There's no cash, so again, you have to write checks out of your general fund. You don't
But
hold
if-
a cash account. except for your
But if
general
we
fund.
got everything donated, I don't understand.
We need a breakdown on the entire.
So the revenues went into the general fund. And then they had to be moved over here. And then also, there was also a contribution from the actual city. That was on the list of contributions as well.
What contribution is that? The 600,000, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So that was city funds that went into that building then?
But that's only for that fiscal year. We don't know the prior year.
Yeah, but still, we said that. First of all, we didn't even budget the 600,000 in our budget to pay back the state, right? So how did we find 600,000 from the general fund, quote unquote, if we were gonna pay back the state? How did we find
It's a paper
600,000?
transfer as the AFO.
But if there was not 600,000 allocated, we had to find it somewhere else, correct?
$2 million capital.
We also
No,
have
but
funds
that's
in your
that.
capital
I
reserve
do have
too.
her answer.
They just said it. We got it from the general fund.
There was 600,000 that was originally on your schedule, which I guess you guys don't have a copy of, but Len provided a copy of what funding made up 115 Illinois.
I know, and it says
Can we get a
the
copy of that?
600,000, that's why it says 600,000. I'm just trying to understand where the 600,000 came from. We did not budget it.
It was forgiveness of debt, wasn't it?
We did not
No,
budget
hold
it.
on, time out. So, correct, any payment to the state has never been budgeted. The first one I made, or the second one I made. The second one I made was in lieu of getting the 6, so that they were gonna use for the school thing with 115. So, just like the first one, it was an AFO decision, I'm paying down this debt, we have extra money, payment that's coming from the state, I'm gonna use that state money because it's going to 115. Oh, by the way, the state says, we're not gonna send you the money, I'm just gonna lower your
What
debt.
money were they gonna send us though?
They were gonna send, they appropriated 600 grand for that.
The reimbursement for what was spent. But in all due respect, Mr.
But when did we know
McGinnis,
that? I guess
in all due respect, Mr. McGinnis, some of these decisions should have been privy to the council and discussed with the council. When we're allocating $600,000, it should have been discussed with the council prior to its allocation. In all due respect, in your position as a former AFO, these are some of the questions because we do not have a finance committee. And I have to apologize. We are reviewing this for the first time because we've never been privy to this information. We've never had a finance committee meeting. There is no finance committee meeting for the last year and a half almost. So all we get is a monthly report with no reconciliation of prior figures. We did not get the worksheets or other information that we may have requested. So I apologize that you're in this a little bit of a hot seat asking questions because no one has asked. So this is an opportunity for the council at this point to request information and to get it. We cannot, in all good faith and all good conscience, as a financial representative of the city, act on information that we've never reviewed yet. You could provide the final documentation of things, but the information to get to the where you are is what we're looking at.
Point of order, Council President. Couple things. Number one, dude, my man, they've said like 15 times we're not acting on anything. And we can feel a certain way about it, but we're not acting. So there's no vote, there's no approval,
We have
there's
to
no exception.
receive.
We don't receive anything,
Yes,
my
we
man.
do,
We
Council.
don't. If you read the bankruptcy, we do not. Now, you may
Yes,
not
we do.
like that,
I don't
but it doesn't
agree.
matter. I let your ass talk for an hour and a half, so I'm gonna talk now. All right? And so, we do not get a say right now.
Yes, we do.
If you want one,
Yes.
we're gonna get one next year. So let's put ourselves in a place to do that. Now, can I please suggest
We have
that
a
you
say
change
now.
the format of this meeting so that they can ask their questions, they can ask their questions, and once we start, if you keep wasting my time, I'm leaving. And so let them finish, so I at least know what the information is, because I read the report, and it seems like a lot of people here did.
Oh, I did.
And they can ask their questions, because they're also my constituents, and then if this show keeps going, I'm out.
I hear you, and I've said it about 1 hour ago, we are not voting on anything tonight. This is a presentation by the company that did the audit, that's all it is. That's what the council requested about 3 weeks ago.
No,
It's
that's
a
not what I requested.
We said nothing about voting, approving, nothing. It's a presentation, and they were nice enough to be here tonight for this presentation, and requested that we open it up to the public, which we're going to do. You're getting your shots at asking questions, but as the councilman said, let the questions be relevant, let them finish the presentation.
Point of order, Mr.
Please,
Chairman.
let them
Point of
finish
order,
their
Mr. Chairman.
presentation. What do you want, Mr.
Point of
Lozano?
order, Mr. Chairman. This action that was taken was authorized by the city council. We have an obligation and a fiduciary responsibility to review it and then accept their report. We just don't rubber stamp it.
We're not
We have to
accepting or
accept it.
denying anything tonight,
Yeah,
Mr.
but
Lozano.
if we
Correct.
want, if we
We
want
should.
to have another independent auditor, guess what, the council can get whatever we want, because we work for the people. So if we want to get a separate
That's right.
lawyer, a separate auditor, we can get all of that.
What do you mean by independent?
Independent, that's not.
They're
this is-
independent.
No, but you don't get it. If we decided, the majority of us, that we want to get another opinion, another audit, we can do that as a council.
For what purpose?
So for this, I understand that we want to move forward, but it's also important to acknowledge that as a council, we're not privy to a lot of information that we probably should be if we're approving $18 million. And that's the only point I'm trying to get across. So it's not even with, the issue's not with Markham at all. We're just trying to let you guys understand that we have a lot of missing pieces. I'm very smart. I can put together this budget. But looking at 115 Illinois, that line, if you go back to 91, those numbers don't add up. If you look at the 803, 612, they don't add up. So for me, I'm lost when I'm reading this.
What do you mean they don't add up?
So,
So 803 minus 1.4 million comes to a negative 612, 640.
Right.
There's a transfer in to cover that deficit, because you can't have a deficit.
so then where's the 1.456 come from?
It's capital expenses. And if you need a detail of the capital expenses, I can provide them to you.
Yes, we've asked.
Yeah, and I will.
So let them continue the work, please.
So we
It's
put
a
more money
presentation,
into
okay?
it.
Please.
We, in terms of total assets, we have more assets in it than it costs to.
That's not assets. The bottom is your.
No, total assets
revenue.
up top though.
Yep. So basically, it's just a net, it's a wash. So there's a due from, and then there's a due to, and it nets to zero. It's just in two different buckets.
So it's 1.416.
It's just the way they
256.
accounted for it. It's net, it's in two different accounts.
So that's additional revenue that went into this from the city.
No, the 1.4 is an asset. There's another $1.4 million liability. That's your top schedule.
Yeah.
Your bottom schedule is your revenue. You had contributions of 805,000. Or 803, sorry, I can't read. And then expenses of 1.4 million.
But I think what the councilman and my request has been is the 1.416 million in expenses a breakdown in our, were there any other prior year expenses? And where were those expenses allocated from?
If you need a detail of the whole Illinois project, management can provide that, but we can provide it if you need it, yeah.
Yes,
No, my issue is the total expenditures versus total assets, if you look at that, those line items. So there's about $50,000 in there that's missing.
No.
So 803,000 plus 612,000, what does that equal?
The 612 is the difference between the 803 and the 1.4.
So,
It's a deficit. It's under.
That's the 612 that was transferred in, like we just talked about.
so the 1.456 then, what is that? Up top.
Those are due from. So basically, when you work in fund accounting, you have different funds. You don't have a cash account for 115. So checks have to be cut out of your general fund. So yes, there are things that go back and forth through each fund. There's an asset on 115 and there's also a liability. So again, they can be net to zero and the fund is.
All right, so we have $50,000 net asset.
No,
No.
no. The 1 point.
So those numbers aren't supposed to match up?
No, not at all.
So what's, why wouldn't they?
If I would just provide a suggestion, I think you should focus on the 1.4 in historical amounts if you want to know what's going on in this fund.
yeah.
These are washes that have to do with the way the accounting system works, in the way, like Erica just said, this fund didn't have a checking account. Many of your funds don't have checking accounts, so they have to account for it in the general fund. There's all this bookkeeping back and forth. So I wouldn't focus on the 1.4 million. It doesn't mean anything, really.
Well,
So should we have checking?
And it washes. The 1.456 up here. The 1.416 is an actual expenditure. And historically,
But it's only in that year.
this year, but
It's only in that
you can
year.
roll it back.
Right.
It's pretty easy to probably get that information.
Yeah, we need the
So I
historical.
don't focus on these assets and liabilities up here because
No.
that's a bookkeeping problem.
So in your findings, is that something that you would suggest to the city? Is to have the separate accounts?
No, we don't think that that's a good control. We don't think you should have all kinds of cash accounts all over the place. We wouldn't suggest that.
No, we won't.
Well, then
We got other suggestions about accounting systems and about how things work here, but not having separate cash
Okay.
accounts, that's not a good idea.
Thank you.
All right, page 70 to 76 is your budget to actual, so this will be, again, this is on a budgetary basis. This is just basically cash basis. So this is not generally accepted accounting principles, it's not full accrual accounting. So it's basically what your budget is, and if you budgeted for it, your actual will show. So basically, you'll see all the detail in these 6 pages. And the change overall is an increase of $994, like we talked about before, and based on your bankruptcy plan, anything plus or minus your 60-day collections and over $50,000 is transferred to your capital reserve. So again, there's a lot of detail on those few pages.
What page is that?
That's pages 70 to 76.
70 is the revenue, 71 through 76 are the expenditures.
So as a city, how do we spend more money than we have?
You didn't, you have to other way.
We've never done that the past 5 years.
Right, because we're gonna tax, that's why we have to.
I'd be in trouble
No,
if we did.
actual, the 19 million? So actual, on the bottom it says 19 million.
We got more money, that's not what we spent.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
not what we got in.
So you're looking at 313,000
Yep.
revenue above expenses.
What was that?
$313,813
Where are you?
total expenditures.
Even
That-
though
that
expenditures, we
is-
still spent more than we
That's
budgeted.
the total
Yeah.
over expenditure on the expense line, right? You have to get a full picture, you have to go back to the revenue. The revenue, you have a surplus in revenue, 1.4 million.
Okay, so the 3.13 are the over
And you
expenditures.
can tell, all the bracketed numbers on these 4 pages or 5 pages.
It's over expenditures on the
Line item.
line item. So the city in this budget over expended $313,813.
And on the line item.
As a net, yes.
Yeah.
So on the total
So did you give an
expenditures,
opinion on that?
We don't know.
We don't editorialize about
Okay.
profits and loss. We just present them and decide whether or not they're fairly stated.
so on page 76, just so I'm reading this right, total expenditures. That's money that went out, right?
Yeah.
So how does, but we brought in 19 million.
That's the bond, so that's the difference,
998.
is the difference. That's what we have.
Say it again?
So we brought in 19, we spent 18, we have 994 left over.
But that doesn't account for also the capital.
So again, you need to remember this is budgetary. So again, there's no accrual in here or anything, or things that you've opened POs for, things like that.
So there is additional amount compared to that figure.
So again, when you look at pages, when we look at page 16, and you saw the $81,000 surplus, that takes into account the accruals and things like that. So that's.
All the
our-
GASB rules.
Now, the 994,000, that's prior to disbursement to the capital fund? Or is that
That's
after?
prior.
Prior. But this does not account for the capital fund itself.
This is just your general fund,
Correct.
nothing
This
else.
is what, I'm assuming you voted on these budgets.
Yeah.
Right? So this is comparing what the council approved for revenues and then comparing what the expenditures were by line item, which you're going to be entering into in the next few weeks, right?
No.
You'll be doing a new budget.
If I can ask, in your review of the financial, did the city authorize any transfer of appropriations in that calendar year?
Yes, there were transfers approved by Glenn, by the AFO,
By the city council?
not by
By the
city council,
AFO.
by the AFO.
Could you provide those for us? Normally that is done by the city council.
Normally, yes. I think under the bankruptcy plan, it was the AFO.
Okay, could you have provided to us any transfers for that fiscal year?
Do you want to see the transfers? that we-
Yeah.
Okay.
Going on page 9. So it says, for the bankruptcy plan, the 944,000 there was transferred to the capital improvement plan account, which represents the budgetary surplus less than 50,000. In addition, there was another 739,000 transferred from the capital reserve fund to the capital projects fund. So what does that mean? What's capital reserve versus capital project fund? What's the difference? Aren't those the funds?
So there are capital project funds in your special revenue funds as well. So it was all,
Can
it
you
was
show me what page that's on?
612 of it is Illinois Ave. 612,000 was Illinois Ave. That's a capital.
That's
project
what was,
fund.
that's the 739,000 that was transferred.
Yeah. So
So-
that was part of it, 612, and then there's another fund that has a lease in the back of 127,000, I believe. Oh, let's see.
Can you show me where that is, please?
A lease?
So that's the emergency equipment replacement. This is the 127.
Fire truck, a ladder truck?
Yeah, well, that we approved that. This, though, that $612,000, see, I'm confused, right? Because now, it was general fund, now it's capital improvement, like, I don't get it.
No, these are capital project funds in the back.
Right, but we never approved, no, 612,000. It was in there, when we saw the capital improvement budget, they put a special, like, asterisk there and said that it was just, until we could get the money to pay it off. It
Okay.
wasn't that it was those funds were gonna be used for that project.
So with financial reporting, if you have a special revenue fund in the back, you cannot carry a deficit. So your general fund has to cover any deficits. You had a $612,000 deficit in Illinois, so it had to be covered by the general fund. So if you find other
But you
funds.
transferred the capital improvement funds to general fund is what you're saying?
So basically, it comes out of capital reserve.
So what's the difference between capital improvement, it's right here, capital reserve fund versus capital project funds? Can you show me?
So the
that-
capital project funds are the school building capital, you
What
have,
page are you on?
there's 89.
Yep.
And then you also have Illinois, which is on page 91.
So 89 school capital building, that?
Yep.
So,
89.
So basically, the way you can tell the capital projects, they all have expense on capital outlay line.
but is there a way that I can see all of those? Is
I
that
can
in
give you a
here?
trial balance. Yeah, they're all in these funds, but they're broken up.
Because I guess I'm confused as to the capital, there's two capital funds
Well, the capital reserve was only made up by your bankruptcy plan.
and the capital.
Capital project funds are an accounting. It's a separate type of fund. There's special revenue funds, and then there's capital projects funds. There's certain definitions that they have to meet to carry on that activity. And I can, if you want the governmental definition, I can send that along to you, so you
I don't
have it.
really need
Yes,
definition, I just want
Yes.
to, I want the capital reserve fund and everything that goes under that, and I want capital projects funds and everything that goes under that.
Okay, well, there's separate trial balances for each one, so I can send you those.
Yes,
Okay.
that lists all together.
Well, they're separate funds, so,
Right, but even if it's a school improvement, 600,000, if it's that,
Within that
300,000,
category.
I want it all on
Okay.
one sheet, that makes sense.
well, it'll be a couple of sheets. It's not all.
But I guess, yeah, for me, I just don't know how, 739,000 that was transferred, was that something that we approved? Is that something that the council approves? It's a lot of money.
So you just want the detail on all those?
Yes.
Okay.
In the interpretation, according to
Would
county.
you like the definitions of all the funds?
Yes.
They probably are defined in your footnotes. They usually define everything.
Unfortunately,
No
when you
footnotes.
find, when you have a full,
There's no footnotes on
Oh,
here.
no, you've got footnotes. But how many pages?
No, there's no footnotes.
How many pages?
But there's 80, 90.
The things that are written in the back are footnotes. These are footnotes with all the narrative. Those are called footnotes. Not like when you say like a footnote on a legal document, no,
Right.
it's an actual, the narrative is your footnotes.
Right, but even I can't tell, so the capital reserve versus the other one, I don't know.
So starting on page 20 is where the notes start. And we go on and on and on.
Mhm.
In fact, most of this report is footnotes.
I think the confusion is that commonly we review reports. When you start to review a financial document such as this, it helps to be an accountant. If you're not,
That's why we're
if
trying
you're
to
not
add
an
that.
accountant, that's why we are asking this many questions. This documentation was never provided throughout the whole year. And that's what we've been requesting. So now we're trying to reconcile what's on page 20 to what's on page 90. You as an accountant, familiar with that. Normal people who are not accountants, it provides a little more difficulty trying to ascertain which funds go to where. where the revenue is, where the expenses are. We have not been provided with the breakdown in the worksheets that certain line items that we're interested in. And that's what we've kind of been looking for over the last year. I've been looking for over the last year and a half. So unfortunately, this is the questions we have.
All right, so the next slide we have, these are your fiduciary funds. So these are the funds that are in the city's financials that you actually ultimately have a fiduciary responsibility. It might not be that you are cutting checks out of these funds all the time, but you're ultimately responsible for them. So you have a pension trust fund. You also have an OPEB trust fund. So again, your overall net position on your pension trust fund as of 6/30/17 is about 9.2 million. There was an increase this year about 1.2 million. So the detail on all those funds are actually on page, if you want more detail.
Is that an increase of expense or additional assets?
Pages 18 and 19 give you more background on what went into these funds. The pension trust fund is an increase. So it's an increase like investment performance, contribution.
So it's increasing on the positive side.
I'm on page 50. Can you please explain net pension liability to me? And why you calculated a 1% decrease and a 1% increase in...
Oh, okay, so basically these footnotes here, these are good to read because there's a lot of information. You'll note that the pension and the OPEB have a lot of estimates built into them. So during the audit, we test the estimates and make sure they're fairly stated. Again, you also hire an actuary to prepare these calculations. So an actuary takes all this data that you have from the city, payroll, on the OPEB, they look at healthcare costs. On the pension, they look at your rate of return on your investment portfolio. They look at who's retiring. So all those things are taken into account to come up with your net pension liability. So your net pension liability is basically looking at what do I have in my trust fund? What's my ultimate liability? And what is my net liability? What's my exposure to the city? As of 6/30/17, you're looking at a liability of about $25.3 million. So again, you won't see this liability on fund financial statements. It's not a fund financial thing. It's definitely in your footnotes, and it's also in your government-wide financials, which are in here as well. So that's basically what a net pension liability is. So in these footnotes, you'll see a number of pages dedicated to your city plan. So that's your city plan. You are also part of the mayor's plan that the state runs. And that plan also has a $2.3 million net pension liability.
Could you explain what is the projection that we began the fiscal year with? You're showing a 1%, a 6.5, a current disposition of 7.5%. And is that rate of return an 8.5?
Oh, right. You're looking at the 1% and the 1% increase and 1% decrease. These are estimates that the actuary comes up with. His underlying report is built upon these rates. So basically, they're looking at the 7.5, so the discount rate of 7.5. So again, yes, it's looking at your rate of return on investments.
What was the actual?
The actual was a little bit slightly under. It was probably more like 7, 6.5. But again, you got to look at long term. So again, this doesn't look at what's going on from a year. They look at it long term and how it's going to perform over the long term.
But they do categorize and provide the detail on that fiscal year. So that fiscal, if they projected 8.5, but we only received a return of 6.5.
Well, they're actually, the liability is built around 7.5. So they show you options. They show you as of 8.5. They show you 7.5, which is what the liability is booked at. And then they also show you as of 6.5.
So is this liability the gap between what we
What you
ideally
say.
would have
Yeah,
and what we don't have?
correct.
Okay.
Well, that goes, just for clarification, that takes into account all the police and fire actives and the 100 retirees that are on pay-go, works out their future mortality rate based on the national rates of how long people live, and it calculates how long pension payments will have to go out. And that's what that number represents, that
So-
the payments out by then. And
So
then
we're screwed on the city one, but we're much better on the municipal one. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's why we always try to get the police and fire into the state plan, but it is very expensive to do.
Right.
As my understanding is also that the calculation is if everyone at this time took the retirement, that's our liability.
No, they stagger it out, the actuary.
No. If that amount,
Oh, yes, that's it, you close today, that's your liability.
that's a
Yeah.
total
That's-
liability if everyone took a retirement as of today.
Yeah.
Or as of
As of 6/30/17.
6/30/17. Now, and that percentage is, that percentage of liability, on an average with the state, this is a 20-something percent. Our percentage of liability on our pension plan, underfunded liability.
It's pretty high, but I'll tell you that a lot of the communities that have their own plans, they do have significant liabilities.
Correct.
Again, it goes by the size of the community, yours is high, but there are higher out there, the bigger the community.
Do you have any findings or suggestions about the pension and OPEB?
Basically, what we usually say is to make sure that you're making your annual required contribution, and anything else you can put into it. That's-
How do we compare, can you talk more of how we compare to other municipalities?
So I do some larger communities, so you're obviously smaller, but I mean, they've done some really big pension reform at Cranston, so I don't know if you wanted to talk to them, but I mean, they've done a lot of work over there, so,
And it's more for the better?
yes. Theirs has come down significantly over the years.
We, as auditors, we're really concerned about your required annual contribution, which the actuary calculates and the administration abides by. If that wasn't being met, then we would have a real finding, and it would jeopardize the audit opinion. But you're meeting that requirement.
Thank you.
So the other liability to be aware of is the OPEB, again, a little bit on the smaller scale, but the city's OPEB plan has about a $3.8 million liability. So OPEB is other post-employment benefits, so you're paying health care after they leave. So, do we have any other questions before we get into like comments?
Well, we got the.
Well, I have the recommendations and the things we found, things like that. All right, so basically, when everything, the compliance audit is final, there will be a communication letter. I guess we have to determine if it's sent to Len or if it's sent to council, if we could just finalize that. So basically, we're required to go over certain points with you just to communicate things that went on during the audit, any adjustments we came across, and then any observations or recommendations, and then anything that rose to the level of material weakness or significant deficiency. So again, we're required to put material weaknesses and significant deficiencies into the Yellow Book report, which will be part of the final package with the compliance audit.
Erica, can I ask you a question on page 78? The excess of expenditures over appropriations in the general fund. I see this to be very high and consistent in the various departments of these accounts which have been overspent.
Okay.
Did you do you have a comment, or did you have a finding on the continued over expenditure on how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 accounts.
Again, so our testing is based on testing if the expenses are reasonable and fairly stated. We don't go into the fact that, okay, you didn't make a budget. I mean, management explains the overs and unders, and management can go into more detail as to why highway was over this year, finance was over. He can provide detailed explanations as to why that happened. Again, our testing revolves around, is the expense valid? Did it occur? We test those things.
Do you have the backup on these accounts?
That's what we were talking about before with all the negative variances compared to budget.
So the detail would be in the pages before.
This is a required disclosure in the footnotes.
No, my concern is if we see this happening over the past year's budget, my concern is the current year operating budget also. So we don't want to make this a pattern. And to have, do you have a total amount on what these overages were?
662, 224,
I'm sorry,
plus
how much?
42,000 for a total reserve.
How much was that?
700,000 for, 704. I added them up,
704?
yeah, plus.
So
700.
those in the report on page 76, those are netted against surpluses on the right.
Correct.
That's
So
right.
Yes.
the net is 313,000, which we pointed out before.
Correct. What that shows me is that we over budgeted. We could,
We under budgeted.
well, we under budgeted, but we over projected in other line items. When you have $1.5 million surplus in excess of operational funds in excess, then transfer here and there. Unfortunately, what that says to me as a councilman and as a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers is that our budget has been off. We are bringing in more revenue from taxpayers and other sources to create this type of a surplus. I've said that in the last budget, that the increase in taxes was unnecessary. Now, when you run, and I asked for a breakdown on the surplus or contingency in excess of revenue funds over the time, you don't have that, but I've asked that of the administration, and I hope they can provide it to us, of our funds over the term of the bankruptcy, and how we expended those extra revenues. We see here in these funds that we have overspent 15 department accounts. That had to be made up somewhere. So it was made up on other line items which are over appropriated. And that we still maintain a $1.5 million surplus. I think it's 1.539 or something like that.
1.3.
Well, that's after paying, after expending other funds that could have been added into that total surplus.
No, that's the budget.
The budget.
You have a budget surplus of 994. Call it $1 million.
Okay, $1 million surplus. But we've also budgeted a surplus in that account. Do you have that line item?
What was that? Which one are we talking about?
There's a 1% reserve in the top, Jim.
Emergency
Yeah,
reserve,
the 1%.
It's revenue
And
reserve.
how much was that?
141,000.
So you have 141,000, which is a budgeted surplus. And then further in the budget, there is another additional amount. So you're looking at least $1.1 million, $1.2 million in excess of expenses.
And the 600,000 that wasn't accounted for.
Correct. So you're looking at
612.
So you're looking at $1,700,000, $1,800,000 of funds that could have been used by the city as a surplus, but were transferred out. That is the account of financial information that I want to get a handle on, of where is all this money going? And that's why I needed more details, and I requested more details on it, because we're able to make up over $700,000 in over expenditures on 15 line items, and still pay a 600 and something $1,000 accounting transfer to the state of Rhode Island, and then still maintain a $1.2 million surplus. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for us to be discussing, and unfortunately, we're discussing it tonight because we didn't have this information before, so we're getting hit with these questions now and review now. And this is still not a complete document for me as a councilman to vote to accept the order, this order report.
We're not voting tonight, Mr.
We need to
Lizette.
accept.
Let anyone else, any further questions? I think you got a narrative here that doesn't fit why they're here. It doesn't fit what you're saying. They're here just to present as they saw the order. That's all they're here.
And to provide further documentation.
Let's ask questions, Bob, you haven't asked one question yet, just saying.
The questions that are being asked, half of them are not fair to them. They're here to
Well,
narrate.
we have a duty
They've
for
done
our
their,
constituents to ask
they've
these
done their
questions.
work,
You
they've
haven't asked one.
completed their work. We just have to wait on the final reports regarding the federal grants, correct?
Right.
And the
So we'll
total
just wait
package.
and let everything happen, okay. In terms of, I think what Mr. Lizzie was getting at, how do we compare with surpluses to other cities and towns that you guys have done this work with?
I mean, depends on the size of the community.
But just percentage wise, so okay, we have 1.7 million surplus, we didn't budget that 600,000, our budget's 18 million. So what's 2 million out of 18 million? That's a big percentage, 15%?
I mean, Warwick had a
Does
huge
Warwick-
surplus this year, so.
What percentage of their budget?
I'm not sure, I don't do their audit, but I know it was reported about $7 million, so.
Out of,
They probably have a $2
five,
million.
out of 500, but out of, that's a very small percentage
Yeah.
compared to what their budget. So for us, I feel like we have historically, over the past few years, we've had huge surpluses in comparison to our budget, right? So when we're advocating for a community center, we're told there's no money, right? So if there is money, then we need to be aware of that, right? So that's just where our frustrations, I guess, come from.
Any other council member?
I just have a question. Can you tell us what is it that you're waiting for from the city?
We're waiting for documentation on the CDBG funds that we've been testing. And I think the person we had worked with was on vacation. And
Well, we
then,
have one person in the city who does that, right? Who works on CBG,
so we're
just
waiting
that.
on that.
And you've
finally.
been waiting for how long?
It's been a couple weeks.
So they're not on vacation.
I think the councilwoman mentioned, this is your, what year doing our account auditing? How many years have you done it now?
I think it's 5.
5 years. This current contract was for how much, could you tell me?
I think it was,
70s?
yeah, around there.
$70,000. So one of the requirements on that, on your contract, is to make a presentation, a final presentation to the governing body, which is the city council. That $70,000 includes this work. And you're coming here and providing your due diligence to us to answer any questions and provide any further documentation.
Right, but we're not on the clock. It's part of that.
I know, because it was due December 31st, so it's not, we're not following it by the clock.
No,
So-
I mean, we're not on the clock. We're not sitting here charging you.
It's
an
not
hour.
an additional. You had a contract fee of 70,000 and that's been taken, well, will be taken care of. Well, I'm looking for that additional information that we requested before I could accept your final report, which, would you say this is your figures final? But you still,
These are final. We've issued these financial statements. There's not hardly a case where when we issued a financial statement and we pull it back, it doesn't happen. We put our name, our stamp of approval on these financials as of April 3rd. And the document gets sent to the state, gets sent to the Auditor General, and so we're through with these financials.
okay, but the
So we had it
final
before us.
document, including the other financial review of the federal,
The federal funds,
has not been finalized yet.
that hasn't, no.
So that is part of the total submission to the city.
Yes.
Okay, we have not received it yet. Mr. Chairman, I know we've asked questions, but I think we should allow the public
We're going to,
ask
Mr.
questions.
Lazaire, we're going to.
And I reserve the right to ask questions
I
after.
want to continue. If there's anyone else, any other council member, any questions?
Can we get they haven't even given the recommendations.
Right.
Right, I agree.
Can they do that?
Right.
Say that again?
We can talk.
Can they do the recommendations?
And the findings?
Yeah. Anyone else? Any questions before we get to that? Any other further questions so we can let them continue on and finish up?
No, let them do the recommendation and then.
Thank you. Then we'll take the public comment.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go through the recommendations that we have, and we're gonna be putting them into a formal report as we discussed. Again, just so you guys are aware, we are required to tell you if there are any adjustments that are passed on by management. As of 6/30/17, during the audit process, all the adjustments were discussed with management and recorded in the financials that you have. So there are no adjustments that we proposed that haven't been booked, they're all booked in the financials.
Do we have a copy of those adjustments?
I can provide them, we have them here, but I can
But
provide
they
them.
were adjustments.
There were a significant amount of adjustments, yeah.
I'd like to request a copy of the adjustments so we can review.
Sure.
And management's responsibility, so when you speak of management, who specifically are you referring to?
Len, Irina, those were the two main people that signed the financial. We get a rep letter at the end of the audit, so those would be the people.
So we're considered management, city council, moving forward.
No.
Your government.
Okay, so it'll be the director, the finance director.
Correct.
So that's management.
Which is, that's typical. So. you
No, I
know,
just want to get an
in commercial enterprises, the auditors are hired to observe management and they report to the shareholders. So this is like that. We observe administration and we report on the financial statements and then normally we report to the city council.
But I think the difference here is, as management, we as a city council, in our fiduciary responsibilities, have not received complete transparency to review this, your document, so that we're comfortable with your final document. And that's some of the requests that we've made here.
Okay.
So based on all the audit procedures, we had some very material adjusting entries, which I can provide you all with copies. Again, we noticed issues with segregation of duties, timeliness of reconciliation. So again, the delay in the audit process was due to a lot of reconciliations not being ready when we came on site, delaying the audit process. Again, due to short staffing, they didn't have enough staff to provide the information. Capital asset inventory records needed significant work to get to a final report. And then just from looking at the bank recs, there are some older outstanding checks that probably should be looked at and just investigated as to why they are so bad.
You're talking about,
Just outstanding checks that are on your bank reconciliations, haven't been cashed in over a year.
okay. And what would you do with those?
So you can issue them to the state, you can move them over to the state to clean up your files. And it goes to unclaimed property, I believe.
And so that specific recommendation is in whatever you'll provide us? Sorry for, thank you.
Can you
It'll
speak
be
more-
detailed, it'll be very, in the report, it's very detailed as to how it was arised, what's the context of it, how can they fix it, and then management has to provide a corrective action and when they're gonna implement the action.
You speak more to the segregation of duties. Is this the like point of failure issue that led to the timeliness of the reconciliation?
Yeah, so the segregation of duties means like there's one person doing a number of functions, which, you know, allows someone to have access to different things that maybe should be mitigated by two people. So those were some things that we found during the audit process, which, yes, can delay the records being ready.
Do you make recommendations on the next door, that we don't have this problem? This has been a consistent problem over the last few years, and the order report has not been finalized by December 31st.
This year, I would think it's more of a problem this past year because of,
No finance director.
because of the personnel issues. A lot of communities don't meet that December 31st deadline. If I recall, Central Falls, we got that work done in January, I think. So that's not too bad. This year, it's an issue, it's being misled.
And I think management can speak to the effect that they are working on the problem right now. I mean, they are implementing some strategies to help them with the process and to kind of eliminate that segregation of duties issue and kind of streamline the AP and the payroll process.
Do you find it normal that city governments, and how many governments have you done?
Too many.
Too many. Do you find it normal that a city government and a city council does not have a finance committee to review this over the year?
The ones I work on do have finance committees.
They have finance committees, they actually have audit committees.
Correct. That's been a
I mean,
complaint.
I mean, the smaller communities probably do not. I'm not privy to every small community, but I think.
I don't know many
But
communities
then,
that doesn't.
you can have a finance, we could have a finance committee. Typically, that's what's done, right? We don't have any committees, so.
Yeah.
We've had,
That's at the
We
discretion
are
of the
the-
council president.
That's right.
Yeah, but we don't meet
We
as a
are the
finance.
committee.
But we don't
We
meet,
are
and then
the
when we
committee.
ask for finance meetings, we don't get
Still
that.
haven't received.
Just being transparent.
Thank you, thank you.
The only time we're heard.
Next item.
All right, so these are just the general communications that you're going to get a formal letter at the end of the whole process. So again, the letter is laid out for different categories. I know you see the heading that says significant audit findings. That's just one of the headings they use. It's just it's an accounting standard. They just developed the letter. So again, they just want you to be aware of the estimates that are included in your financials. Again, the net pension liability that we talked about built on a lot of estimates. Again, we look at the estimates, we test them, see if they're fairly stated, that they make sense. The allowance for doubtful accounts and the tax receivable, the net pension obligation, so again, that's another one. Again, your useful life of fixed assets. You're estimating how long you're gonna use that asset over the life. So that'll calculate your depreciation on your government-wide statements. Again, the statement disclosures that we talked about, the retirement plan disclosures, just be aware there's a lot of information there. Take a read through. That'll give you a good background of how everything's built up into that liability. The OPEB, which is the other post-employment benefits liability, there's a lot of disclosure in there as well. Again, difficulties in the audit process, that's just the significant entries, things not being ready when we came out here, so that's a lot of back and forth, delaying everything. All the adjustments that were proposed to management were booked to the city records. No adjustments were passed on, so nothing was passed on and not recorded in your financials. There were no disagreements with management during the audit process, everything. Oh, sorry. With all this. the rep letter, as we discussed, at the end of every audit, we get a representation letter from management. So that was received as of the date of the report. We have that as well.
Can you get a copy of that?
Of course. There was no management consultation with other independent audits or accountants while we're here that we are aware of. So just so you're aware, the required supplementary information is considered RSI. So again, your RSI would be your budget, the actual, your management discussion and analysis. There's a lot of pension information in there that's required supplementary, so it's required by the governmental accounting standards. So again, in our opinion, it's not required that we opine on it. Again, we're testing things underlying those expenses, but we don't generally opine on that information. The supplementary information, which is all those combining schedules in the back of all your capital projects, your special revenue funds, we do look at those and provide the opinion based on the financial statements. The last slide is just really for informational purposes. You know, as those charged with governance, you should be aware of the different GASBs coming down the pike. So there are a lot, they've been busy at the GASB, obviously. There's a lot coming out over the next few years. If you need any more information, we can lead you in the right direction. There's a lot of good summaries up on the GASB website. If you want to know how it will affect you, some of them don't affect every community, so just to be aware of them.
Could you provide maybe just to email those?
All of them, or you want a link just to the GASB website? I can provide the link.
Those that should cite.
Okay. It's also in here, page 2021.
Yeah, we put it in your financials
Yeah,
as well.
but the description of it.
The description.
The percentage.
Okay, any questions?
Is that it?
Anyone else going to, before we get to the public, anyone else on the council have questions? Colleen, please. The audience is going to get their chance. I want to go through the council first.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
I think in due respect, there may be questions that are going to be raised that we may need to address again by the council.
With that, we have a silent sheet. Thank you, Josh.
Right next to Mike.
And Ms. Woolen.
Edna Poole, 68 Notre Dame Street, city taxpayer, resident for the last 78 years, and a frequent attendance at these council meetings, and a former finance director. So I read the report. There's a lot of information in here, and a lot of which I was not happy with, not because of the auditors, but because of what has happened. I will commend a few departments who came in on budget, one of which was the police department, which never used to come in on budget, and they came in on budget, so I will commend them. The city clerk's office came in on budget. The board of, the city council came in on budget, city boards came in on budget, the inspector's office came in on budget, and the retirement account came in on budget. The rest of the accounts, if you add them up, it's $704,000 that was over budgeted. Now, I added that to the 1.3 million, and it comes up to $2.0 billion as a surplus. If you add it in, rather than deduct that $300,000. Now, that's a lot to have that many departments come in over budget. Someone's not watching the store. And I blame the AFO. He's in charge of the finances, he said it, he's the last one that says what goes on. He hasn't been watching to make sure that these departments come in on budget. They should be getting reports on a monthly basis, if they're that far over, and some are really over. They should be watching it and making sure they cut back so they come in on budget. You know, we don't need to have the tax increases we've had, I mean, 4% tax increases, 3.5, 3.9. I mean, those kind of tax increases are unconscionable for the citizens of the city of Central Falls. We have a lot of people who are on the poverty level. They barely are making it. They can't afford to be putting out money that they don't need to. Every one of us wants to have a city that is run, you know, properly, that we have the right number of people, the departments doing what they're supposed to. But when we're having surpluses of we could have surpluses of $2 million over budgeting. I mean, something's wrong with the budgeting process, and that's the AFOs. You know, and him saying, well, we have this, one hand washes the other. I took accounting in college for a master's. I've never heard that said. You don't wash one hand with the other, and you don't do it on a handshake. You could have done that back in the 50s and 60s. With a handshake, I could go to the bank and I could get a loan for anyone, just on my word. Can't do that today. So you shouldn't be doing that with your budgets. So, I mean, that's unconscionable. My other question is, how much do we owe the state still? You know, I'm looking at this on page 10. It says due to the state, 3.345 million. Is that what we owe the state from the bankruptcy? Yes? How can we owe more, go into it, than we went into it? We were 3.2 in bankruptcy when we went into bankruptcy. We now owe 3.34. Something's wrong. You know, I don't know. You know, we're still in bankruptcy. I mean, we're still not a city that is a sound city. We owe our police and our fire pension plans. With all the money we've been collecting for the taxpayers, we should have been paying in more than what we've been paying in. I mean, we have an obligation. These are people who go out there in a fire, policemen who go out there and every day can get shot, and yet we're not taking care of them. You know, I guarantee you, I won't be around probably, but another 7, 8, 9, 10 years, we will be back in bankruptcy. We were in the 90s. We didn't go into this kind of a bankruptcy procedure, but we were there. But I don't understand how we can be due 3.3%, 3.3 million, and we started out with 3.2. If we have an obligation to pay the state, let's pay the state. Let's give them their 600,000. Let's give them $1.2 million. We can afford to do that. Let's get them off our backs. If I were the state, I'd be down on the city of Central Falls so fast. They got a bigger problem than we have. And they're not carrying us, I'm telling you, much longer. So, you know, I look at that, and I just, you know, there's a lot of meat in here, and, you know, if you really look at it, to pull it out, to find out what's really happening. Lenny, you weren't here, and I will say it in front of you. I blame you.
I heard you, I don't know.
All right, just so you
I
know.
blame you for a lot of things too, and you were here in the 90s.
That's right, and we got it out of bankruptcy then. And we started to pay the pension
I
plans
think we can
then.
move on.
And we started to get an actuarial study. So you went on here, Lenny, you don't know what we went through. And we worked with the state on that. And we had state oversight, but not the kind that we did. We were still responsible for the city. You tell these people sitting here who've been elected by the public that they're not responsible? That's unconscionable. I voted for these council people. I expect them to come here and, you know, represent me. Not you, Lenny. You've got too much of a vested interest in things here. And I'm saying that. That's my opinion. You know, and I appreciate the people who've asked questions and the people who've read this. And if you don't understand it, get someone to sit down with you and to go through it. Because there's a lot of information. You know, you're going to be judged on what happens to the city in the future. He's judging me on what we did. He wasn't here. You know, I could go through a whole lot of things, Lenny.
I didn't judge
You know,
anything. You're the one judging me.
I am, because I've got, you know, we've got a surplus of what we've got, and what, with 15 departments are over budgeted. That's your responsibility. It's not the council's, it's yours. And you haven't let the council really see what's going on, because they don't get up-to-date financials. That's unconscionable. I don't think that's what the state meant when they put an individual in here to oversee. You're to oversee to make sure that we're doing what's right, and we haven't been doing what's right for a while. Thank you. And I give you a lot of credit for putting up with this stuff.
Via recital, Siegel.
Good evening, council. That's a hard act to follow, former finance director. I do have some comments and questions. I do echo Ms. Poulin's concern about where we are going as a city. My biggest concern is sustainability, and that is what is happening to us, what is happening to taxpayers, what is happening to the city regarding our real estate and our business taxes, the tax burden that goes on our residents. As everybody knows, we're the most economically challenged of all the municipalities in the state. And with all due respect to Markham and their representatives, to compare us to any other municipality in the state is kind of a disservice to us, because I can't name one that actually went through bankruptcy. That would be us and us alone. And I would say this, that because of that, we are to be held to a higher standard of not only transparency, but also to the due diligence of our AFO, who we pay very well in this state, over 6 figures, and to every person who's been elected. Oh yes, we pay, is that a question, Councilwoman Fonseca? So he is paid over 6 figures. We pay half of it, and the state, at our tax dollars, also pays the other half. So I would just like to say that it would be nice if we could get a dispensation of the $750,000 in federal funds that we received in year 17. Also, during my time on the council, I was assured by the AFO that we would not be giving any local tax dollars to the 115 Illinois project unless it came before the council. So I ask each of you council members if you can tell me when that happened.
That happened during this council.
Okay, can you, okay, great, thank you, Councilwoman. So you approved the 700,000 that, well, that's what I'm asking. So where did it, right, where was it approved by this council? So again, that's 700,000 on a project. When that project was presented to the council at the time, the project had no details, zip, not one financial attachment to that. I voted no, just that on that basis alone, because of these types of things, to spend that kind of money, over $1 million of taxpayer dollars, on a project that really isn't clearly defined yet, I think is egregious to the taxpayers. Back to, I had this written down before Ms. Poulin spoke, but the money that we owe to the state was originally $3.2 million, of which I know under the time I was on the council that we paid at least $600,000. So my math, I know, but I don't understand how, I don't even understand how we could be audited and be over that and where all the handshake money went. So I would also ask that the council look into that.
Are you saying?
We paid 600, so we paid, it was 3.2, we paid at least 600,000.
Well, the figure here is 3,345,000.
Right, so we, not only did we go, not only is the 600,000 not noted, but we're over the 3.2 that it originally was.
So we're looking at over 4 million.
Well, I don't know.
We were given 1.2.
You would have to ask the administration about the financial and actually, or the AFO. Or the AFO, so, because
It was 1.2.
okay, thank you. Thank you.
That doesn't include the 600 and something thousand.
This year.
That does.
No, it does not include this year. That was
Okay.
from previous year.
No, you're talking about the 600 for 150.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, so
Right, that doesn't
right.
include,
That's
so
a
it should be
1.2
1
budget.
point.
Is that,
If we
is,
paid this year, it would be 1.8.
so is that, okay, so that 600,000 that we're referring to is in 17? Or no, it's in 18, it's in now,
Would
right?
be. It's
Right.
not, it's not in the budget, we would, but if we paid it, if the state charged us, then yeah.
Okay,
That would bring
so,
us up to
No,
1.8.
but that,
thank you.
what Mr. McGinnis mentioned is that the 600,000 that we expended in Illinois Street, 651, was in lieu of making the payment.
Right.
So
That's
if
1.2.
So
we
we-
have a figure of 3.345884, and you add in the 600 and something thousand.
No, I think it just means that that's where we're at. And that what I understand is that 600,000 going into 115 Illinois is, instead of making a payment to the state,
Right.
we took that money which again, I don't know any council person who approved that, but you can let me know, because I think that's a most ridiculous exchange. But that 600,000 then went into the 150 in Illinois instead of paying our debt to the state, which is what we were required to do.
So my-
But I'm assuming everybody here knew that because you are the council. Excuse me?
Fiscal year 18, what's going on with that? That's my question too. Do we have to pay that back? Because as written, we have to pay that back.
That's us.
It's a liability.
Oh, yeah, that's us.
Shelby Maldonado to save our ass.
No, but we didn't. But that's the 600,000 that just went into 115 Illinois.
No, that's a
Or
separate.
that's,
Yeah, that's-
okay.
This
right.
600,000 was fiscal year 17.
All right, so we
Well,
didn't
that's-
budget this 600,000 for this year. We didn't budget it and we don't know if we're paying it.
Can I ask also that the prior years, did we get a forbearance of 1 point something million on the payment?
Rep Maldonado works something out.
No, previous years.
I'm sorry.
Wasn't there an initial forbearance of how much?
So, in a memo, so obviously the subject comes up a lot. I can't remember the month that it was provided, but I did provide directly to you, Councilman Lozaya, the state letter that detailed the total amount, what's been taken off, and the remaining amount. The remaining amount is 1.2 million. It was 3.2 at the start of the bankruptcy. There was some adjustments made, some legal fees that, listen, I've been fighting why they would add 70 grand on top of the 3.2 after I started. In my opinion, once the receiver left, that should have been a closed bucket, but the state is the state, and they did that. I'm not sure of the summary of how that's accounted for, but it shows that the original amount, the amount we owed to the state under Class 19 bankruptcy was 3.3 million. We have either paid or gotten credit for the difference between 3.3 and 1.2, so it's 2.1, so 2 point something. So we owe,
Okay.
So why does that
Not-
say that?
yeah, not
doesn't
according
affect
to
the
the-
There's
budget?
an additional
It
amount.
doesn't affect the budget.
So you're at 3.3.
2016
3.3,
was 2.6.
correct.
No, but you
Wait,
said
we're at
3.2 minus 1.2.
3.3. We owe right now to the state $1.2 million.
So
We owe
what
to
we're
the
saying
state,
is page
This is
42 says
630.17.
otherwise.
This is 630.17, 3.3.
So prior to that date, how many payments were made? Was there a payment made?
there was a payment made of 600 grand, and then there was two appropriations in two consecutive fiscal years by the state.
Forbearance?
That's in lieu of giving us the money and us paying it back. They just forbear, I could use your word, they just credited the account and then updated the memo. So the first memo from the director of DOR counted the first 600, and then it counted the other one. So the memo, I believe gave to all the councilmen and then gave to you personally, funded the new director of DOR, because there's been like 3 of them, shows what's been reconciled to that account and what's remaining. We owe 1.2 million. We owe 1.2 million.
And when was that due?
It's due 2021. There is no requirement to pay a dime until then. There's no requirement under law to budget for it. It'll be the management's prerogative whether to do that or not.
The 0.2 million, if it's payable to 221, do we have to put a pay interest on it?
No.
No.
No, oh, no.
What we're
That's
saying is this doesn't reflect that. This page, I don't know if you have, but this page does not reflect what, it says
The audit,
$3.345 million.
The year before
So
was
we're trying to see
2.6.
whether this.
it went up.
right.
It went up.
And this
That's the
doesn't,
audit, right?
this doesn't show any of the, you said we made a previous payment, that doesn't reflect the
The
previous
600
payment.
Well,
The
it would've
600 is
wasn't-
the payment.
Yeah, he said we made one payment of 600 grand.
Right, but that was in fiscal year.
No, that was multiple years ago. The first payment we made was a payment. The 2 years we've made,
Right,
we've gotten credit for 1.8 million.
but this doesn't reflect that.
1.8
is what-
million off the 3 point,
I'm
So
gonna
then
stop
that's
asking my
1.5.
question.
The question,
well, I say
though,
1.5.
That's okay.
No, I'm saying, the state and I are in disagreement.
About that
The total-
difference?
Yes.
Okay,
So they have acknowledged that where we're at right now is 1.2 million.
Okay, so
That Councilman,
So my question to the council, to the AFO, or whomever can answer it, is why the audit says 3.3 million owed after 2016, that's 2017, so 2016 was lower and it got higher. How did that happen?
And if there is a report, I would like a document saying that we owe them 1.2 million.
I believe you have that
No,
already.
we don't.
They can have this stuff for that.
Yeah. I was under the assumption, I believe that went to council,
No, you sent us something on the 9th, but that's just a breakdown. We don't see.
the memo from the DOR is not in that same, okay, that's fine, I'll provide it. Councilman Lozaya knows, because I gave it to him personally.
You did give me certain documents.
Yes. I gave you the state summary, the breakdown that adds up to the 3 million,
That was in
the
person.
memo.
I received no documents by email.
But then the auditor should have that information too, right, to reflect this?
Yeah, but this, I have this information, the 3.3, yes.
Yeah, the letter might have come after the June 30th deadline of the year, so I'll figure out what this, we owe 1.2 million, so I just want to reassure the residents and the council, we owe 1.2
But
million.
this, the
That's what the
audit
state
has
is
that.
acknowledging.
But the audit,
So something needs to be reconciled.
He may have something that happened after that. So we gotta talk about the same period, that's as of
Right.
6/30/17.
Mr.
We are
McGinnis,
almost into a whole nother fiscal year at the end.
right,
so I don't
fiscal
know.
year 2017, prior to.
We made payments.
We made a payment.
This is showing that we have no.
No, it went up. It still went up.
No, there was an amount you got on addition, 1.2, and then there was a $600,000 forgiveness.
Right.
In
so what did it
17.
go up? It should be
But what's
down.
Yeah.
so what's your total? Do you guys have a total
You
price?
see the 2.6 million
Yeah.
in 2016, 3.3 million in 2017?
Yeah.
It should be going
That's an
down.
addition.
There was an addition of
There's an
1.2
addition.
million.
1.2.
An addition that we owe them?
Added that we
For
owe them.
what?
I can get you the documents, but we.
Oh, see?
if I could just, Mr.
So they didn't
McGinnis,
forgive us.
No, this,
Mr. McGinnis should mention that
there may be
Right
an
now,
issue
we
with
owe-
how it was accounted for, the forgiveness. Because again, there was no accounting, it was a memo. So this is a challenge of turning into an agreement between the state and the city, i.e. me, and to deduct how to deal with this class 19. So there are accounting issues when you actually don't transfer and pay, whether it goes
Right,
in.
so you still have to
right?
show the paper trail.
Right, exactly. And, well, the memo from the state is an official document. I will give it to you, I thought I did. I will email it to all of you tomorrow. It is signed by the DOR director. Shows the history and the balance.
to my correct email. Mr. McGinnis, you
To
mentioned,
your correct email.
now,
T. Lazayer at Central Falls, US,
that's not my
RI.
email, correct. Now,
And-
Mr. McGinnis, you just mentioned that we paid 600 and then get credited another 600 and 600. So we've been credited 1.8 million, correct? With that, you said we still owe 1.2.
Yes,
That is 3 million.
yes.
Okay, so
As I
the
told the
difference between the 3
resident,
million and the 3.45,
the state and I are not in agreement with certain numbers that they added. They sent personnel from the state while they were getting paid by the state before the receiver started. I've been fighting this from day one, and I refuse to acknowledge how they double dipped. So they paid they paid workers, state workers that were gonna get paid to do their job anyway, and sent them here and got paid, and then dumped it into class 19 and charged these residents. And I refuse to accept that $300,000 that I've been fighting it since the day I started.
So in terms of the 600,000, right, if as a council, we said that no taxpayer dollars would go into that. How did taxpayer dollars end up going into that?
It didn't. It's, just think of it as the state gave us 600 grand. So if you wanna, so,
What they gave,
okay, looking back, believe me, I wish I would have separated these transactions, okay?
You're
Obviously.
accountant.
I'm
So
sorry.
don't even get into it with him, please, no comments from, like,
So,
If you want
again,
to talk
because
about-
it's a memo, and it's not accounting, it's not debits and credits, right? It was decided by people senior to me at the state. I'm not gonna send you money to send it back. So I said, okay, I need that money to pay that bill. I said, well, we'll credit you, just pay the bill. It's just like, if I owe you $1 and you owe Bob $1, you telling me, just pay Bob. It clears the debt, you just pay Bob. So that's essentially how the transaction is when you look at it.
So just to be clear, we will not be paying 600,000 fiscal year,
we might.
this fiscal year 17, that the 600,000 was taken out of? Is that right?
Right, well, it was taken from the capital, because they didn't send us the money. The 600 grand that was paid to 114 was out of the capital fund.
Okay, but, so they forgave us for 17.
Yes, because I told them we were gonna pay it.
So a decision was still made to use tax dollar money. Yeah, because if not, it would have gotten either
No, the
forgiven.
decision was by, I didn't mean to cut you off, I
No,
apologize.
no.
The decision was to pay the state back because of the performance of the city at the time.
Right, and
So I was gonna
that's,
mail them 600 grand.
right, but that's separate than investing it into a building, correct? Like if my taxpayers know that we owe the state $600,000, that's different than saying, I'm gonna use your $600,000, your taxpayer dollars, to go invest in a building that half of our residents aren't even gonna walk into.
So if the,
So, I found the
Right.
document.
okay.
So the email, just to clarify, I mean, you got the ball on sale, but, Wednesday, September 13, 2017, we have the bankruptcy court filings. And the state must be doing something shifty here, because according to those, and these are from court, okay, they acknowledge that the city paid 1.2 million towards the expenses, and the total amount before was 3.3, taking into consideration the account, the 600,000 that the city paid in fiscal year 2016, and here's where the controversy is, and the $600,000 appropriation to DOR by the General Assembly for fiscal year 2017 reduces the amount owed to 2.103 million. And so these are the court documents submitted by both the DOR, the City of Central Falls, and the actual case docs. So we have those, they should be in our email.
And then there should be,
The city's doing, or the state then is misreporting what we owe.
then there should be an additional 600 and something thousand from the Illinois Street.
That's included there, so
Yes.
that's part of the court.
Forbearance credit.
Specifically for 115?
It doesn't say what it's for, so it's
Because I
it
think
said
that
it's a
decision was made
DOR.
after that memo was sent.
Yeah.
That
As
600,000
Mr.
came
McGinnis said,
after.
it's 1.8 that has been credited to payment on that. So that may be prior to,
This only says 1.2.
What email? You're looking at an email?
Mhm.
Councilman Lezay is correct. 1.8 million has been credited towards the account. What is in question is whether it's 300 or 3 million or 3.2 million. You know, obviously there's documentation to get to 3.2. It's a real number. I'm not saying it's a fake number. It's just that I don't agree with the fact that they should pay state employees 5 years ago and charge this city to pay back over 10 years, state employee paychecks, that they're already getting paid already. So there's this 200-300 grand delta that I refuse to acknowledge. Whether that
Okay,
means
but-
anything.
Okay, but my question to the council would be, how did we get from, first of all, how did it go up? How did it go up from the 3.2 when we made a payment before 2016 of at least 600,000? Even on the audit, it says it went up.
I will have to sit with you.
Okay, so that's a
Go over
real,
that page.
right, so that's a real question that I have. And then the second question, because it sounds from this perspective, like what we call creative accounting, which I think, back to Councilman Acosta's point, some things sound shifty. Okay, that's my first. Back to Councilwoman Fonseca's call for an independent audit. No offense to Markham, but I would say this, that that's a very interesting, had we not had this meeting, when was that going to be discovered, is my question. And then I want to talk about a little bit about Councilwoman Fonseca's point about Finance Committee. We did have a Finance Committee years ago. It was a committee of one. Councilwoman Gonzalez was our committee of one. As far as I know, we never met, never had any information. Finance was delivered the same way as you see it today. Also, delay in audit, Markham's comments about there were all these listings of why there were delays. I would draw them back to one thing, and that is the fact that this administration did not hire, correct, because they had it held open for a particular person. I find that to be a conflict of interest, that the person who's here to oversee us by the state would then receive a job under this administration. The delay, so it led to two things. One, it makes us look not so transparent to the community and the state at large. The second thing is, my concern would be that we are purposely delaying these audits. It's been going on for several years. No offense, again, to Markham, because I don't think Markham is the reason it's being delayed per se, but they are delayed, and we are now talking about, we're a year behind. So here's why this is important in my opinion. When we do audits, those are the only real numbers we have. That's another thing, prior to this council sitting, and some people that were here can speak to this, that every month we got departmental finance reports. You do not get those anymore. I don't know why, but you should, because some of these questions, these are things that you can follow through monthly, ask questions, and then things like overages of hundreds of $1,000s in departments probably will be seen prior to the end of the fiscal year, or even better, a year later under an audit. So I don't know where anybody actually would recognize these things. Let's say the term had expired and you all were gone, and there was yet another council sitting. They wouldn't necessarily have that history. So I think these are important things, especially given the fact that you are now the council out from under state oversight. I ask you, as a constituent, as a taxpayer, and a person who loves the city of Central Falls, that you take your job fiduciarily very seriously, because I have a lot of concerns. We just uncovered one thing about creative accounting, or whatever we want to call it. The auditor is calling out as one thing, the AFO is calling it out as another, and nobody can explain it. Yet, this is a document we're supposed to accept as is. So I think I think that's all I have. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about how financiers were handled prior. Not because you all don't know what you're doing, because I think you certainly do, and I love your questions. But I see the way that we work as a community. One of the reasons I spent a lot of time trying to understand this so I could help this community find out why we went into bankruptcy. It's just not numbers, people. The reason we went into bankruptcy was because we don't have enough engagement. Okay? So for this to work properly, you need three things, okay? And one of them is the engagement of the people. You all are doing your job, and you're doing a great job. You really are. But when you're up against people who are not transparent in giving you all the information that you need to do your job, you need the community to be able to step up and do their part. I come, other people come on a regular basis. We're not here to harass you or do anything. We're just here to do our part, which is to question where our money goes. That is our responsibility. That is our responsibility. And if you go to any other council meeting, you will see it there. It's really sad, because my hope was 5-6 years out, away from receivership, we should be on a better arc, not going down. So anyways, thanks for listening to me. I really appreciate it, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Councilman Ferry, I just one comment. I didn't say it before, but I want to commend you. You and I have been at loggerheads a lot of times, and I had a very difficult time getting the audit. I called City Hall, which told no, I could not get an audit. I called Councilman Ferry. Councilman Ferry got me an audit. He delivered it to my house, so I want to thank you. I appreciate that. And I don't know if we're going to get at loggerheads again, but I really do thank you. That, I really appreciated it.
Thank you, and you owe me a coffee, by the way.
Anytime.
You did invite me for a coffee. Thank you.
I came late, I was in Fall River. My question is, when someone just said about public engagement, when is this video going to be shown on public TV? Or do we have to go to YouTube? Because I've searched, is this going on tomorrow or do we wait? You know, this is my question to the council, to someone.
I've looked and I think, unfortunately, the last video that I've seen was in January.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's been
It's
updated.
updated.
The last
And
one I saw this week
where
was
do you find it?
YouTube, but I think what we can do as a council is set a time, so it's up within 48 hours, down to 2 hours. I think that's something that.
There are now also links to all the former meetings in the minutes. And so when you look at the agenda for the next meeting, there's a link that tells you what exact website you can go to watch it.
To watch it?
Right.
Okay.
To
I
watch
don't
it.
think that was updated until January. I looked at it
You
this
know,
week.
I tried looking, I couldn't find it.
of the meeting.
Yeah, I rewatched some of the
It
community
is up by
parts.
the end of day on Tuesday after every single Monday meeting.
Well, I'm not that savvy.
I can
I'm
help
not
you
that
find it
savvy,
if
but
you'd
the
like to come
community's not that savvy. How come we're not on channel 14, channel 15, 17, or whatever? Why not? That would be simple, not this YouTube stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. Any
About
further
Facebook?
questions of the ordinance here?
Mr. Chairman.
And I thank you for the time you voted.
Mr. Chairman, I do have further questions, but I think we need to await the other documentation that we received and request that Markham come back with the further documentation and the final report. I hope that they can do it as soon as they can to schedule a meeting to review, then finalize the audit report and accept it in a final version after reviewing all the requests that we've made tonight.
So what format would you like that in? Because the schedules could be umpteen pages when you're talking capital asset listing. So do you want that all printed or do you want it emailed?
Personally, I'd like it printed because I do not read off a computer. I read documents. I've always requested everything that the city provides, that they provide a hard copy. That's been my request since last year. That's my
Majority of the
request.
council, all of our documents are emailed through the city clerk.
So I would send it to city clerk and she'll get it to you? Okay.
Could you also, if you're send it to my private email, because I do not receive.
If you give it to the city clerk, they'll send it out. But do we have a final date as to when the final report will be ready, and then can we schedule that meeting today?
I can't finalize it until your staff.
Okay, so when is the city, can I ask the city when we're getting all our documents to Markham? Can we have a date?
We'd have to check with planning. I don't have an immediate answer for that. I believe it's the CDBG funds that Renato, that they need in order to finish their report. Renato was on vacation. She's the CDBG administrator. And so I'd have to check in with her and I'd be happy to give you an answer by tomorrow.
Can we?
I don't want to have any budget meetings until we have the final audit, until we have the final meeting with the audit. That's my recommendation as a council. I don't think it's responsible of us to have any budget meetings for the next budget until we close out this year.
And can I also add to that, Councilwoman, that if we can have a separate meeting, not included on a scheduled council meeting,
Yes.
this, handling just this topic is what we need at another council meeting. You shouldn't be distracted by waiting for us to do all the business. You should be exclusively at another meeting with all the information provided well in advance so we can review, and if it's possible to contact you even beforehand if we have questions, instead of just keeping on a lot of questions on this evening, on the evening. That's what I recommended in the past, that we meet with you, kind of go over. And I would also request, Mr. Chairman, that if there are any financial information that needs to be discussed in the executive session, that we can do that at the time, then come out and relay that information to the public. If that makes it more comfortable for the administration or the auditor to review some of this information.
Anyone else? Thank you so much. James, Erica, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Here's my card if you need it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Madam Clerk, next item.
Good welfare, President.
Good welfare.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I submitted to the city a schedule from the American Red Cross. I asked that it be included on our website. It has not. I posted some of them, but it's the American Red Cross utilizing and providing free smoke detectors to residents in the city of Central Falls. I believe the date is May 5th. I asked, I'm the representative from the Red Cross. I'm a former board member there, and I'm assisting them in the city of Central Falls. I asked that it be posted, be advertised. The Central Falls Fire Department is assisting, and I want to thank Navigant Credit Union. They contacting them, they offered to utilize their Broad Street office as a site to utilize that day for the volunteers and the workers to meet. It's a Saturday. I believe it'll be from like 8 to 2. And welcome anybody who wants to participate. But I ask that the information I provided and my access be allowed and posted on our website. Thank you. I also want to request that I submitted prior request for the council meeting and prior requests for resolutions or congratulations or condolences, and that a number of them have not been acted on, and I asked that they be put on. One of them is for a recognizing the Armenian and Christian genocide, which will take place tomorrow. My family was affected by the genocide that took place. A resolution was submitted. It still has not been acted on, according to other resolutions I submitted. I asked that we can do that, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Thank you. Hearing none, seeing none.
Mr. President.
Motion for adjournment. Have a motion
Second.
by Councilman Solano, second by Councilman Rosier. We stand adjourned at 8:45. 8:48. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.